Everyone, and welcome to the Grafton Select Board and Grafton School Committee joint meeting for the purposes of appointing a vacancy. First order of business, I would like if everyone could please and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get into further discussion on tonight's meeting with the school committee, I would like the community with the select board and the school committee, please take a moment of silence for the passing of Sheila Ide. For those of you who don't know who Sheila Ide was, she was the first women's selectman ever elected in Grafton and served for 12 years. Thank you very much. At this time, first up on our agenda tonight, we have school committee appointment joint meeting with the candidates here. So before we get into the interviews with the candidates, does anyone have any questions tonight on the process? Anything last minute things come up that we need to discuss as a board before we continue? Does anyone have any questions?
Can we just roll through the process real quick of what's expected and how it's going to go?
Sure. You want to go?
Sure, I'll do it. So the packets that you have contain the resumes and cover letters for each member that we're interviewing. The last 2 pages are the questions, so you can take notes. We have 7 questions. We can dole those out amongst both committees. If you would like to ask one of the questions, we'll just assign questions before we start. We're going to interview the candidates in alphabetical order by last name. So we're going to have each candidate introduce themselves, and I'm going to have to explain this part each time a new candidate comes in because they can't hear us. They're going to have 2 to 3 minutes to tell us about themselves, why they're interested, and any various community school activities they've been involved in. Then they'll have 2 minutes to answer each question. Laura is going to be the timekeeper. She has a paper that says 30 seconds that she will hold up to give them a warning, and then they'll have to stop. We're not going to have any off-the-cuff questions tonight. We're going to stay with the list that we have. And then once all the candidates are interviewed, we'll open to deliberation, and that'll be read by Peter. Sound good? Yes, Liz.
How will we dole out the questions? Who decides? How do we decide?
Well, we can do a couple different things. If you have a favorite question, we can say Liz is going to ask question number 3, or we could just go in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can do whatever you guys would like.
Order sounds fine.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I recommend going in order.
Okay. So who would like to take the first question, then we'll go around from there.
You guys got 7. It's quite lovely. Right there. Started Jen, ended Doreen.
Sounds fine to me.
Except, you want to start, Jen?
Works for me. I wanted number 2.
Perfect.
Okay,
So thank
so
you.
we'll go Jen, Liz, Laura, do you want to ask 3, or would you rather not because you're a timekeeper?
I'll give somebody else an opportunity.
Okay, Matt, you want to take 3?
Sure.
Peter, do you want 4?
I will take 4.
Okay. I will take 5. That leaves Doreen with 6. You get the nice long one.
Yep.
And then Colleen, you can take 7.
Perfect. I thought I was out of it.
That's the one that I got the first time I had to do an appointment, and I kind of felt like at the end I was like, oh, well, that's kind
Not
of
really a question.
it's not a great question, but
I'll dress it up. It'll be good.
you'll
Not often.
no, you will not jazz it up. Do we, Mr. Chair, do we have to do a roll call because we have a member on Zoom?
Yes, I just had that in my to-do list, but I do have one member tonight who is remote, Mr.
Okay.
Mead. So I would like to do a roll call of the select board, please. When I please say your last name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. DeFazio,
DeFazio here.
Mr. Mead,
Mead here.
Mr. Often,
Often here.
Ms. Roy,
Roy here.
Carlson here. Board is accounted for. Thank you.
Okay. We ready to begin?
We are ready.
Okay. We have Miss Staci Bennett on the Zoom. Ms. Bennett, welcome. If you could just introduce yourself, you have 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll start the questions, okay?
Sure. So I am Staci Norton Bennett, Grafton resident. And first I'd like to say thank you all for being here tonight. I very much appreciate your time and consideration. To tell you a little bit about myself that you don't have in front of you tonight. I grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, and graduated from Needham High School, where I was very fortunate to receive an amazing public school education. I then moved on to Washington, D.C. to attend college and subsequently earned my master's degree in teaching secondary education. I remained in DC for 15 years. During that time, I worked in public policy, juvenile corrections, and eventually teaching high school English in the Baltimore, Maryland County Schools. Eventually, though, I realized I really missed New England and I wanted to come back home. I was eager to return to Mass to raise a family and be in the presence of some of the best public schools in the country here in Massachusetts. I first settled in Bellingham and lived there for quite some time. During that time, I worked as a registrar in the town clerk's office, and I also served as the president of the Mums Club of Medway and Bellingham. I then spent a few years in Mendon before coming to Grafton and calling Grafton my home. Having two small children at the time, I wasn't quite ready to volunteer and make the commitment to be a school committee member. However, having lived in 3 different communities throughout Massachusetts, I did gain invaluable insight into the Massachusetts educational system. I frequently attended school committee meetings and engaged various superintendents in dialogue regarding school policy. This experience helped me better understand the role that school committees play in their districts and the impact they have on students and their local communities. It is with this personal experience, coupled with my professional background in education, that I come to you today for your consideration for the open seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the first question. Ms. Connolly.
What attributes do you believe are essential for successful committee members?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people have a different idea about what it takes and to be on the school committee. I believe that there are 4 attributes that a school committee member needs to have. First, they need to be able to listen. Secondly, they need to be able to think critically on the issues. Third, I think it's necessary to collaborate during the decision-making process. And fourth, to have the ability to find creative solutions facing the district.
What do you think are the 2 or 3 most important functions of the school committee?
I think that's a really important question as well. There are 3 functions I think that the school committee is responsible for, and that is hiring a superintendent, crafting policy, and understanding, overseeing, and approving the budget. With regards to the budget, I did want to say a few things. The school committee must be responsible stewards of the taxpayers' money. The committee must walk a very difficult line in balancing quality education with the taxpayer burden. With over $36 million in net spending and just over $12 million in Chapter 70 funds for FY23, including ESSER funds, COVID relief funds, and so forth, this is no easy task for the committee. Keeping in mind that over 80% of a school district's budget is allocated for personnel and transportation. Again, no easy task. It must be ensured that every dollar spent is done so in the best interests of our students. Allocating this sum of money will require each school committee member to understand the basics of budgeting and be willing to make some difficult choices. However, having a clear understanding of what the school committee's role is helps to keep the board focused and on task to bring forth the education that all Grafton students and their families can be proud of.
Mr. Often.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What strengths do you believe you would bring to the school committee?
I believe that I have several strengths to bring to the school committee. First would be my professional background in education as a secondary education teacher. I also have taught creative and performing arts. In my current role as Director of Programming and Youth Services with the Salvation Army, I work with high-risk and at-risk kids. I run a program called Bridging the Gap, and what we do there in that after-school program is working with kids to improve their life skills. So we deal with anger management skills. We talk about substance abuse and sex education issues. We talk about college and career readiness. We work on resumes. So I have a very good understanding of what students are in need of, what's happening in the public schools. I deal mostly with Worcester students. But it's with that background and also the background as a parent of children in public schools. I understand the challenges. So I can see both sides. I can see the challenges that teachers face, administration faces, and students and their parents. And I think all this work that I've done in these areas have helped to inform me on the issues and will help me be a credible source in, again, finding those creative solutions for any challenges that face us here in Grafton.
Thank you.
Mr. Carlson?
Thank you. Are there particular issues that motivate you to serve on the school committee?
Yes, absolutely. I think first and foremost, the issue that I am most concerned with would be academic achievement. I think that's something that's on everybody's mind, something we all wish for our students. We wish them success in their entire academic career. I believe the long-term goal of a quality education is to create lifelong learners who are well-adjusted, civically engaged, and contributing members of society. As a teacher, I know that students learn differently, and there's no one-size-fits-all. Finding what works for each child and their family can be challenging, especially for the classroom teacher. As a former college professor of literature and composition, I have seen firsthand students struggle with college-level writing when they first enter my classroom. And this is only one subject area. Math continues to be an area of concern for many students and their parents as well. But these educational basics are the foundation of quality education, and mastery of these subjects are some of the most important predictors of future success. As a school committee member, I would work to ensure that our adopted curriculum addresses these issues effectively.
Okay. What do you think that the school committee could do to help improve student achievement?
That's a great question. I think one of the best ways to improve student achievement is to improve communication. Communication between parents and teachers, teachers and administration, and communication with the town as well. Often the town, I think, and members of the town might be a little confused as to what we do on the school committee or what you guys do on the school committee and the difficult decisions that you have to make. And balancing, as I said earlier, that burden between quality education and the taxpayer burden is a difficult one. So I think it's important to have constant communication with the superintendent as well, to keep an eye on the curriculum, to oversee that curriculum, and have that dialogue open as possible so that we can hear from Mr. Cummings as to how he believes the curriculum is working and where it might need to be tweaked or changed, what's working and what's not working. So I think communication is key in improving student achievement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fazio?
Thank you, Madam Chair. How can the school committee balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
Right. So I was just mentioning that as well. That is tough because we're not always going to please everybody, right? I think, again, we need communication, as I just stated. We need clear communication, not only amongst the stakeholders that I just mentioned, but also with the parents and the residents of the town. It would be great to see more people show up to school committee meetings and speak about their concerns and challenges that they're having, so that we can hear straight from them, what is the burden? What are the burdens that they're dealing with? What is it that the school committee can do to help with that burden? And what are they looking for in an education for their child? So again, improving student achievement and balancing that, we need to hear from everyone, from all stakeholders, parents, teachers, even students. We definitely need to hear from students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Roy?
Well, we will take any questions that you may have.
Oh, okay. What are you looking for in a school committee member? What do you feel are the attributes that would best fit?
Don't look at me.
She's serving on the school committee, not the select board.
Well, I think all of the things that you mentioned in your answer are accurate. We do work together. We don't come in with, preconceived ideas of how we might vote. We collaborate.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of listening. We do a lot of reading. We do a lot of communication with Dr. Cummings. So I will say that. Any of my fellow committee members have an answer?
I would just add to that, looking for someone who's willing to do the work, who's willing to come prepared. There's a lot of work outside of just going to meetings. There's, like Amy mentioned, documents to review and things like that. So looking for someone who's ready to come to the table well-informed and ready to add something to the discussion and help lead us to the best possible decisions that we have on the table.
Excellent. Yes, I would agree that research is key.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for putting your resume and letter in and coming and joining us tonight. You can stay on the Zoom and watch the rest of the meeting if you like, or you can go off the call. Either way, you'll hear from me tonight.
Okay, I'd love to stay and join you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll wait for.
I'll let Kristen know.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Switch over to our. Yeah, why don't we do that one? Why don't we put her down as an attendee?
Yeah,
We're
thank
gonna-
you.
There we go.
That's awkward.
Say that's a little awkward,
Yeah.
Hi, Ray. I don't know. Now
Hello.
now we have to look at Ray. Is that okay?
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
Ray, I was supposed to sit next to you, and I was a little bummed. Now I have to sit next to this guy.
Well, Laura, please don't adjust that chair because I've got it the way I like it.
But it's too late. My feet didn't touch the ground. I already adjusted it.
You have to assume the position though. You have to sit like way back. It's like tilted, like Ray does.
Right, you have to lean back.
Oh, all right.
There you
Should I
go.
put my feet up?
We really are serious
No.
about this. We're
This
just
is
waiting
just-
for the next candidate.
Oh,
to
I'm
come in.
sorry. It's just me. I'm troublemaker.
Oh, I have no trouble having a little fun in the in-between time. How we doing on time?
We're good. She did great.
Yeah.
I'll try reading the question a little faster.
You were fine. Everybody did fine. I do like Madam Chair though.
Did I say that? That's my head.
Everybody did. It was very nice.
We claim Madam Chair in our
I
meeting.
started
Yeah,
it.
we do. You did start it, Matt. Thank you.
It's the right thing.
I never liked it.
I didn't call you Mr. Chair. I called you Mr. Carlson. I'm
That's
sorry.
fine. I go by either or.
You go by what?
Either or. During
They said
meetings.
Edouard. I'm like,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's
Edouard.
That's his select
I'm
word
gonna say that
persona.
next time. Like, Edouard?
Okay. Can we just try it up to like a higher quality mask that muffled my voice? There we go. Thank
No.
I'll be going tonight as Lorraine.
Here we go.
That's my school committee name.
Hello. Come on in. Have a seat. Our first in-person candidate. All right. I'll let you get settled. I'll go through the process real quick for you. So we're interviewing everybody alphabetically by last name. We'll give you 2 to 3 minutes to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
why you're interested in the position, any community school activities you're already involved in. Then you're going to have 2 minutes to answer each of the 7 questions we have for you. So we're going to go around. Each committee member will have a question. We'll stick to those questions. There won't be any surprise gotchas. Laura's going to keep time. If you get to within 30 seconds of the end of your time, she's going to hold up a sign that says 30, and you'll know it's time to wrap it up.
Okay.
And then after you're done, you can leave. You can sit in the audience. You can go home. Either way, you'll get a phone call from me tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
All
good.
right. With that, we will open the floor to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for your time. I'm actually thrilled. There are 4 of us here today, and there's a lot of interest in getting involved. My name's Leora Brom. I have 2 students in the Grafton Public Schools. One is in 4th grade, one is in 7th grade. 2 really different kids. My 7th grader is like super high achiever, really self-motivated. My biggest worry with her is often, is she challenged enough? What's she doing? Is she pushing herself? My 4th grader, on the other hand, has Down syndrome. So he is getting special education services. 2 different kids, 2 very different needs. And I think that's what motivates me to be here today. I have 2 kids that are exceptional in their own ways. And I think all of our students are exceptional in their own ways. So that's kind of brought me here today. Sorry, I'm talking too fast.
No, you're doing fine.
So for the last 16 months, sort of as part of my experience parenting a child with special needs, I've been the co-chair with my colleague Heather Nadeau of CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And during our tenure, we've really sort of upped parent participation, sort of changed the relationship and the way we interact with the special education teams at the schools and overall in the district, given parents a much more sort of active community to interact in, and increased visibility for, you know, both the wonderful things happening and some of the challenges in the district for parents. Really trying to help facilitate better communication and be a conduit for parents to access the building, you know, the special education teams in their building and get the services they need. So it's this experience and perspective that I really hope to bring to school committee, should I be lucky enough to serve.
Great. All right, we'll start with our first question from Ms. Connolly.
What attributes do you believe are essential for successful committee members?
So it seems to me that a school committee member is kind of first and foremost balancing these very diverse and sometimes competing kind of interests, right? You've got sort of parents and students, you've got administrators, you've got teachers, and then there's this municipal budget issue, right? And sometimes those things can be very much in conflict. But at the same time, you know, if something breaks down in one of them, sort of has an effect across the board. So there's sort of this need to, you know, balance these different factors, understand them, consider them, and it's a huge responsibility and requires kind of a pretty sophisticated level of empathy, understanding, and logic in order to kind of manage all those different pieces. The other thing that I would say is it seems that somebody on school committee really has to be open. And what I mean by that is, you know, not come to things with preconceived notions, know people outside of their neighborhood, and understand, you know, sort of take data and inputs from, you know, data-driven sources, but also families across the district who might be different, who might have different needs, and bring all of that to the table when making decisions and thinking about policy. And I assume that thick skin is probably also probably, you know, requisite number 1. So.
Okay. Ms.
Yeah,
Spinney.
I'm wearing mine. I've got mine. It's building up. What do you think are the 2 or 3 most important functions of the school committee?
Okay, so understanding that the school committee is in charge of budget, policy, and the superintendent, I would say kind of everything that happens here is pretty important in terms of, you know, obviously having the resources for student achievement, doing our best for students to make our school communities, safe and open and places for exploration and, in terms of the superintendent, really setting the tone for what our school communities look like.
Mr. Often.
What strengths do you believe you'd bring to the school committee?
So, I mentioned what I thought school committee should do, which is kind of balance these competing issues and constituencies, and unsurprisingly, I think I'm really good at that. So, throughout my professional career, I've had to kind of balance similar, diverse, and competing interests. And my strength is really in advocating for the best possible result while keeping all of those things in mind. So most of my career has been in communications and marketing firms. So as a senior executive in those types of firms, I've had to balance the needs of clients, i.e. results, with the realities of their budgets, which sometimes are this, right? And then managing the teams that are working on their accounts to make sure that they're being treated fairly, they're being paid fairly, they're not overworked. And so my ability to kind of manage all of that really helped me grow in my career. And I think it's an essential skill here for school committee as well. And also I have the thick skin. So.
Thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Are there particular issues that motivate you to serve on the school committee?
Well, I think I alluded to them in my introduction. A lot of times when special education is mentioned in town government, it's mentioned as a line item, right? So it's a budget issue. How much are we spending on special education? But the services and supports that students get really benefit the whole school committee, right? So by ensuring that all students are involved and included, we're enriching the experience of students with and without disabilities. We're teaching about diversity, we're teaching people to work with different types of people, we're modeling inclusive communities, and we're ensuring that everybody, again, with and without disabilities, has the opportunity to showcase their gifts. So I'd like to see special education become more than a line item. It should be an area of pride and focus. From my experience in the Down syndrome community, Grafton is known as a town that gets it, right? People want to move to Grafton if they have a child with Down syndrome. I think we can expand that. I think we can do more. And again, I think the benefits are really obvious for kids with and without disabilities when we do that. Similarly, Grafton is changing. We're growing. We have people of all sorts of backgrounds. We've got a more diverse population. And, I've felt that school committee has done a great job of addressing this, right? With including other holidays in the calendars, et cetera. And I just think there's more to be done there.
Thank you.
What do you think the school committee could do to help improve student achievement?
Okay, so at the risk of sounding like a single issue candidate, which I'm not, I do think there are lessons from special education for all students. Grafton's already providing a significant portion of the school population with individualized education plans, right? So the best practices from this process, I think, can and should be applied to students across the board. Universal design for learning, adapting curriculum for each student to meet them where they are, giving opportunities for kind of self-directed study. These are all things that are going to help our students to be active and engaged and really embrace learning. So, Grafton does a terrific job, particularly given our per student budget. And I think we can continue to drive achievement through a culture that places each student sort of in the center of the equation.
Mr. Fazio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How can the school committee balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
Wow. So I kind of alluded to this. We do a good job with our per pupil spend, I think. If you look at our peer schools, that's kind of established. Obviously, the school committee has looked at different various budgeting models and continues to respond to the dynamic nature of the current time that we're in, right? So I think managing the balance between instruction-based costs and non-instruction-based costs is kind of a big part of that. Now, things like necessary capital improvements or health insurance are costs that we can't necessarily control. But I think that calculus, that instructional versus non-instructional expenses, is kind of a crucial part of the school committee's commitment to student success, figuring that out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Roy?
We will take any questions that you may have.
Okay. I would love to hear what members of the school committee think are important attributes.
Ms. Austin?
Sure. Thank you. I think coming in with an open mind, coming in with, I've seen over the years, sometimes we've had members who have just one particular issue, and you said that you don't, and I wasn't meaning that you do,
Yeah.
Leora, by any means, but it's difficult when you come in with that, because once you're finished with that, there's still a lot of work to do. So coming in with, thinking about every student and being diverse and coming in with different ideas to help and a different background, I think is always very helpful for us, being able to listen, being able to work together, and disagree, but disagree kindly, and being a member of the team is important to me. And Liz, I'll steal your answer, but doing the work, having a strong 5-member board where everybody is doing the work would be amazing, and something that would really continue to help the town of Grafton as well as the district. So, thank you.
Any other members of the committee have anything to add? Any other questions from you?
No?
Well, thank you for coming out tonight.
Ah,
Like
I
I said, you're free to
appreciate
stay, you're free to go. I'll call you
I'm
later
gonna go
today.
Chit chat with my other
You're free to do
my
that as well.
colleagues. We were having a great time.
Oh, good.
Thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Thank you
I
very
forgot
much.
to tell Kristen. I got too excited. We are ready. Okay, I let Kristen.
We are halfway through.
We're doing great on time.
Yeah, we are.
I might owe somebody an apology. No, you.
You'd rather be safe.
Me?
Oh, he went on deep, saw. He heard me.
Who hasn't watched the meeting, Laura?
That's okay.
We were given what we were given, we were prepared, and we're,
Yeah.
Putting it on the-
Well, we don't know how long the deliberation's gonna go.
yeah.
I'm not allowed to. It was very
3
strict
hours.
orders not to do that.
What, to go off?
Could get
Yeah.
ugly.
3 hours
Sorry.
for delivery?
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. It's a tough one.
But you're
You
listening.
worded it very weirdly.
I got
No.
you.
Tell them
You're right.
listening.
No, you're so right. I'm sorry.
Just going along.
I got you. I'm a little off.
Awesome. Like, well, somebody else is halfway through a question.
What
last
is your
person.
favorite grade to give students? What?
Any version.
Oh, really?
It's fine.
What did we get?
Well, not an A+ student. I'm
sorry? What did we
grading
get?
somebody.
Why is it maroon?
But everybody else, is it, everybody has
I'm-
a picture with it?
I'm
Different,
plus,
but
that's my blood.
Deliveries.
So-
Millbury
Colors
did
are
it.
maroon.
I think it is my brother.
I
I
always found
wrote
that so
down it
weird
is.
that we have
With
green
the
and you have
answer.
maroon.
I think it has to do with the
I'm old
contrast,
positive.
and this was the best for
But
looking
over my
at
negative.
presentations.
Oh, really?
There's science study behind the colors.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, this is Rebecca Soto. My
Soko with a C.
Oh, Soko.
Yes.
My apologies. I'm glad I said.
I get it all the time.
I'm sure you do. Okay, I'm going to go over. I'm Amy Marr. I'm the chair. I'm going to go over kind of what the process is tonight, and then we'll begin. Okay. So we're interviewing all of you guys by last name in alphabetical order. We're going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to introduce yourself to us. You can tell us more about yourself, your involvement in the community, and then after that, you're going to have 2 minutes to answer each of 7 questions from the committee, and we'll go around. Each committee member will ask a question. So there won't be any off-the-cuff gotcha questions or anything like that.
Okay.
Laura is going to be our timekeeper. She will hold up a sign when you have 30 seconds to the end of your time for each question.
Okay.
And once we interview everybody else, we'll open up the meeting for discussion. You can stay or go at the end. It's up to you. And either way, you'll get a call from me tonight.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all right, we can begin. Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Rebecca Soko. I am a veterinarian at Second Chance Animal Services in Worcester. I've been with them a little bit over a year. I started my career in San Diego as a public school teacher. I used to teach middle school science. I also taught community college for a while, and then I decided to go back to school to become a veterinarian. And Grafton has a lovely vet school, in case you didn't know, so that's how we ended up here. I have 3 children that are, only one of them is currently in the public school system. The other ones are too small, and we really love it here. I would love to be more involved in the education process. I have a lot of feelings and in general about education, not specifically to Grafton, but I've also been really impressed with all of the accessibility on social media that I've seen in Grafton, and I really would love to be able to, you know, sort of have more insight and more input in some of those things. So more about myself, I guess, is, that's about it. That's all I've got going on. I like animals, you know, I like to paint, but I spend most of my time running around after toddlers at this point in my life and trying to get to bed.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll begin with a question from Ms. Connolly.
What attributes do you believe are essential for successful committee members?
I think that's a great question. I think that one of the things that's really important is to be able to listen well to the people that you're representing. I think it's really easy to get tunnel vision into what my personal needs or wants are from education, and I think it's important to be aware that you're like representing an entire town of people, and especially a town of students, and keeping in mind what their needs and wants are as well, and what I think is important might not necessarily be what everyone else thinks is important. So I think that's really important. What do you think are the 2 or 3 most important functions of the school committee? One of them, I think, is listening to your community, because that's who you're representing. I think that's critical. But around policy and making policies clear and accessible to everyone, I think is wonderful. I know you guys have everything online and everyone can see everything, and wording is great, and a lot of the stuff you have is like super easy to understand, and keeping all of that in mind. The school district where I work in San Diego, it felt very much not accessible and not user-friendly at all, and I really like how well everything seems to be. It's easy to find the information you want, it's easy to answer those questions, and if people don't know where that stuff is, you guys are very willing to be like, here's this information when they post it online, and I love that as well. So making sure that what we're doing is like transparent and clear and understandable to the people that we're representing, I think is really important. And I took notes on what the third thing I wanted to say was, and I have no recollection of what it was right now. So I wrote notes, I have them at work, sitting right there. So, oh well, it is what it is.
Mr. Often.
All right. What strengths do you believe you'd bring to the school committee?
I think I have a different perspective than a lot of people. I haven't worked in education in quite a while, and I think sometimes that's a good thing. I also have the perspective of a different public school community. Some of the issues that I dealt with in San Diego are not things that we would necessarily be dealing with here, but at the same time, sort of, some of the things are universal, you know, achievement gaps and things like that are, you know, things that you're seeing everywhere, and I'm interested to see what our strategies are here versus what I've seen in the past, and I think having a different perspective is probably also working outside of education is nice. I know I'm not the only person who works outside of education, but I think it's nice to have a different end.
Thank you.
Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Are there particular issues that motivate you to serve on the school committee?
There are. One of the things, and I think this is probably a big one for everyone, is during COVID, I've definitely worried a lot about mental health of students. And I think that sort of making sure we're all addressing that in more creative ways than we have in the past, not because we aren't doing a good job, but just because it's really come to the forefront that
students need more help than they've been getting in all aspects of their lives, mental health wise. So that's a really big one for me. I'm also really interested in looking at how we assess achievement in schools, and that's something I'm interested in, sort of academically as well, like looking at how you measure success when you're looking at students, and sort of how we turn that around and look at what we do to improve success, which I think gets into the next question. But
Thank you.
What do you think the school committee could do to improve student achievement?
there it is. I think, and so this was, when I first read that question, I was like, how do we measure achievement right now? And so I think one of my personal feelings is that I really like to assess or analyze how we look at achievement in general, and what we're doing for students who don't achieve in the way that we're measuring, and whether that means that they're actually not achieving, or are we measuring something incorrectly. And I really think that, I mean, there's so much research that standardized testing is not the best way to measure achievement, and I would really love to be involved in sort of supporting other ways and trying to come up with other ways to measure student achievement. So my answer is not an answer to your specific question, but it's more that I think measuring student achievement is a loaded gun. So.
Great, thank you. Mr. Fazio.
Thank you. How can the Grafton School Committee balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
I think that's an amazing question, because isn't that the question, right? Like, if only we could do that really perfectly. I personally am, so I'll be frank, I don't know how much control we have over taxes in Grafton, and I don't really know how that stuff works. So, but personally, I'm a big fan of funding education, and I think higher taxes to fund education are a good thing. Obviously not astronomically high, but if there's anything in your community you want to invest in, it's your students. So I'm not going to shy away from that.
Thank you.
Ms. Roy.
We will take any questions that you may have.
Do we have any control over how taxes work in this town?
Oh, good, a question for the
Listen,
Okay. Well,
as a matter of fact, the answer to that question is yes, but it's ultimately decided by the residents of Grafton at town meeting.
that's what it is.
So, the way our open court system, we attend town meeting, the warrant articles basically outline to the community and the public how much are we wanting to spend, and you all get to say yes or no, or make changes on town meeting floor. Not that I encourage people to do that, but that is a possibility. But yeah, that's
Cool. Okay.
that's who ultimately gets to decide.
Makes sense.
Ms. Often.
And don't worry that you don't understand all of that yet. Most of us probably didn't prior. I certainly didn't. Just to quickly add to Peter, without going into a really long explanation, we're capped at a 2.5 limit though, and our education budget rises at least 4% to open the doors. So there is that gap. In the past 7 years, the committee has been involved in passing 2 successful overrides to go over that.
Okay.
So we've had a little bit of that. Now we're kind of in the stage where we're trying to stretch that override as long as possible, because we don't want to the burden, but we did have influenced that, and some of that was because we demonstrated the success and the fiscal responsibility of the school committee and to that. So
Awesome. That's,
yeah.
My other question is, and this is somewhat relevant, but because this is such a sort of short appointment, I read about how you do your onboarding training and all this stuff. Would you do the same thing for this short appointment? It's a
Yeah, there's a couple of training sessions coming up. We would hook you up with that. I know that there's going to be online next month.
okay.
And there's an in-person on Saturday. So, in Everett. So it would depend on availability. I think it's worth going.
Yeah,
I think it's also worth, they offer, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees offers like lunches on Fridays where while you eat your lunch, you can watch a little video and you can learn stuff. This week's is on MIAA, which I know this much about, so I will be watching. But the finance ones are definitely very, very helpful in understanding how that all works.
Is that every Friday?
It's not every Friday.
Once a month.
Is it once a month now?
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. For a while, they were doing them every Friday to make up for the lack of a conference, but we did a conference this year, so they're not doing them every week. But
I feel like it must be a challenge for you guys for the short. It's like you're going to have to do a lot of investment for someone for a short period
Yes,
of time. So hopefully
is.
it works out.
Ready?
Good luck to you all.
Liz, go ahead.
Just to add to that, it's all interesting though, and we also have a very good handbook that we give to all new members, which has a lot of information, and most of that is specific to our school committee, so it's great. And we encourage new members to meet with the superintendent too to get to know him.
That handbook is really good bedtime story reading, by the way. Go ahead, Jen.
And I came, when I was appointed, it was in a short time frame as well, but Dr. Cummings and the chair are very good about helping you
Okay.
get up to speed. So
Excellent.
it's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
I think that's it.
Thank you so much for coming in. Like I said, you'll hear from me tonight either way.
Perfect. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Thank you.
Good night. Is that still the requirement that within 1 year you have to complete so many credit hours for MASC?
Yep.
In your first year? Is that still a
You have to
thing?
complete the
The 8.
initial training,
The 8
yeah,
hours.
yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't it just that,
but it's nothing beyond that.
the course?
It's
Whatever.
Yeah, the
charting
charting the
the course.
Yeah.
When I first got elected, we were the first year that everyone had to do that. That was a thing. And I was just curious if it was still going on. That's
It's
good.
very helpful.
It's
It
great.
was. It was
Yeah.
extremely helpful.
Yeah.
The online one that they're going to do next month is going to be in 2 parts. Just because being on Zoom for 8 hours is a lot.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, you did it online.
I figured that out. But yeah, so I asked on Twitter yesterday, what day is Tracy going to do the Chapter 70 stuff? Because I want to review it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
been a couple years, so I want to make sure I'm fresh. I don't think I have to do it again if I got reelected. do I?
No.
You do have to do like your ethics.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah,
that's true.
but you don't have to do the training ever again. But it's good to refresh. I think that it's
I enjoyed it.
When you
so.
do it later, you go with a different model.
with a different set, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because you know more, right? Like you come in with all these ideas and
I didn't do mine so I got elected in June, and then I couldn't attend the first one in the fall, so I had to do it in January. So it was good, I think, already knowing
'Cause you already knew
something,
some things, yeah.
and yeah, was able to ask better questions, I think.
Some of those learning
And
lunches
use
have been so excellent. The one on diversity was really good.
yeah, it was really good. And the one on how to become a chair.
I missed
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Welcome.
Do you want me to sit or stand?
Oh, have a seat. I'm gonna be here for a little while.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay, so this is Maria Graciela.
Yeah, you can call me Graciela. I mean,
Graciela?
Yeah.
Okay, Vargas Baker. She is our final candidate. I'm gonna go over the procedure briefly for you, since you haven't been in the room, and then we'll begin, okay? We've interviewed all the candidates in alphabetical order. You're the last one. We're gonna give you 2 to 3 minutes to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in the community. After that, you're gonna have 2 minutes to answer each of 7 questions that'll be posed by members of the committee. Laura is going to be the timekeeper. She will hold up a sign to let you know when you're within 30 seconds of your time so you can wrap up. And then after you're done, you're free to stay or go. Either way, you will get a phone call from me tonight. We will decide tonight who gets the appointment.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So go ahead and tell us about
Tell me
yourself.
about yourself. So, Graciela Vargas Baker, and I am a school psychologist. I have been in some sort of education, in the education realm for my entire adult life, for almost 20 years. I was a teacher in California where I taught dual immersion. And when I moved to Massachusetts, I became a school psychologist. I went back to school and became a school psychologist. I come from a family of educators. My parents are teachers in Chile. I immigrated to the United States when I was 12 years old, so I was born in Chile. And throughout my experiences in the schools, I've learned a lot just from being a student in the schools as an immigrant, but also just being an educator and a professional in the field. I love school, so I have been to school a lot. I have a advanced degree and a master's in school psychology, as well as a master's in education. Let's see what else. I'm a mom. I have 3 children. 2 of them have gone through Grafton Public Schools. I love living here. I have volunteered at Apple Tree Arts for a few years. My children are very into the arts, so that's part of the part they gravitate towards. And I know I saw this as an opportunity for me to give back to the community that has given us so much in an area that I consider myself an expert. I consider myself an expert in a lot of things, but education is the area that I consider myself to be most knowledgeable about.
Okay, thank you. We'll begin with Ms. Connolly.
What attributes do you believe are essential for successful committee members?
What attributes? Okay, so obviously this is a team. And working as a team, I think it's a very important attribute to have someone who's open-minded, someone who is willing to hear others' perspectives and be flexible in their thinking, someone who's able to work towards the common goal. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's a team, it's not one person, and I believe that it's just someone to be able to work towards something that they see that it is an asset to the community. Someone who is compassionate, enthusiastic, empathetic, and willing to work towards the greater good.
What do you think are the 2 or 3 most important functions of the school committee?
School committee has lots of functions. I believe the most important, not attributes, but the most important functions of the school committee are to create and regulate and enforce policies. I mean, there's lots of policies that go into effect in the school committee. Also has to do with the budget, balancing the budget, making sure everything is being met, and making sure that there's enough money for everything. And another function that I see responsible for the school committee is to hire, evaluate, and supervise the school superintendent.
What strengths do you believe you would bring to the school committee?
Okay, so I think my greatest strength is the knowledge that I have as part of being an educator. Like I said, I worked in the public school sector for my entire adult life. Education has been a very big part of my life. In my job as a school psychologist, especially in the last, all the time that I worked as a school psychologist, but for the last 4 years when I worked in Westboro, I've learned to work as part of a multidisciplinary team. As part of that multidisciplinary team, I work as just one member of the team who has to be obviously responsible for my part, but also to be able to be flexible and hear and understand everyone's perspective and work towards a mutual goal. I don't have the final say in anything. I lean on my team a lot for that. Another strength that I have that I think I bring to the table is that I am an immigrant. I lived through it. I have had a big part of my life identified as an immigrant and what it's like to be an immigrant and the struggles that someone has as part of being an immigrant. And for that, I've always looked into inclusivity, making sure that everyone is getting what they need, regardless of race, gender, identity, sexual orientation, just making sure that everyone has what they need.
Another strength that I have is my work in Worcester Public Schools. I did a lot of parent outreach, where I worked with families and supporting them to getting them what they needed, food, education, anything that they needed.
Thank you.
Are there any particular issues that motivate you to want to serve on the school committee?
I think I touched upon a few of them. I'm very big on equality and equity in education. I think that's a pretty big issue. I believe that everyone, regardless of gender, sex, identity, sexual orientation, you name it, color, ethnicity, deserves the right to have an education, the best education, a top tier education. I also believe that another issue that I see within the schools right now is kind of like a little bit of a COVID that has brought it more to light with the mental health issues in the school system right now. I live it. I see it every day, day in and day out. The need for more mental health supports and the shortage of mental health supports available.
What do you think the school committee could do to help improve student achievement?
I guess that's kind of a tricky question because it kind of makes me think of the definition of student achievement. Student achievement can be anything from grades, from graduation rates, to learning how to read and write. As a school psychologist, my training has taught me to see a child as a whole child, not just look at, grades. So I think I guess it just depends, to answer your question, I guess it just depends on what student achievement is, what the definition for student achievement is, depending on how we want to see it. Like I said, like my training is just making sure that the child's receiving everything that they need, and that would be considered student achievement to me. Whether it being mental health support, social emotional support, academic support, behavioral support, I would consider that student achievement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How can the school committee balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
That's also a pretty tricky question because I think that's a pretty hard task for the school committee to be able to balance the needs of the school system and stay within budget. I think one way of trying to balance that out is providing effective programs within the schools, things that have worked and have worked over time, things that are research-based, and also with a strong educator force. I mean, nothing gets done without those teachers. So I think that's one way of helping balancing things out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We will take any questions
Any
you may
questions?
have.
Oh, I survived. So I actually do have one question. So if you haven't gotten this by now, I'm pretty big on parental involvement and equity and equality. I looked through I watched some of the school committees meetings before, and I wasn't sure what has been thought about parent outreach or parent workshops to parents who don't necessarily speak English as a first language.
Laura, go ahead.
I actually think I know the answer to that. That's a good question. We have run a lot of we've run seminars and we do a lot of education. It's on our website for English as a second language. We have a whole parent education program and curriculum for them. So we've done that. I think there could be more work to be done for sure on even translations. We try to translate documents as needed. We do everything we can to give things in hard copy, translated, and to reach people that way, and to work with parents directly. So I think the main thing we've done is putting together those courses for parents and families who have English as a second language.
When I worked in Worcester, I was part of a committee that worked on parent education, and we looked into PICE, which I think something equality in education. So they ran a program was pretty significant in the way that they taught parents who's were just newly immigrants of how the educational system worked in the U.S. But there could be different depending on the country that you're coming from. It's hard to, as knowing from my own experiences as a kid, it was hard for my parents to learn how to navigate the educational system, and I think that I was lucky enough to have parents who were educated and were teachers in their native country, so they kind of knew how things worked. But I truly believe education is, you have to be educated, and I think that that's one of the areas that children can succeed, is providing parents with education and the tools and the resources that they need for their education. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
You're free to stay. You're free to go. Like I said, either way, you'll get a phone call from me tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you
Bye.
for coming
Oh,
in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was a great idea, by the way, Laura.
What?
Having parent education.
It wasn't mine.
No, I know, but I was just saying, like, I think we have a lot of even just young parents in the district that don't.
Yeah.
Things are different from when they went to school, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether or not they come to programming is another thing, but all right.
Amy, can I ask one question before we start? Kristen
Go for
would
it.
like to know if she needs to stay.
I don't think so.
I didn't
You
want to
think
make
so?
this. I didn't think so, but it wasn't my call. So
Yeah, I mean, unless there's people hanging out in that room, is it okay
Yeah.
for people to hang out in that room without Kristen being there?
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I don't know if that's where you
If your
keep this.
school committee candidates vandalized my building, I think we've got a whole different conversation to have, don't you?
I didn't know if that's where you kept the secret treasure. I mean, you've been hiding a
that's
phone under there all this time, so
It's literally my favorite feature of this room.
that's pretty awesome. Okay, so in terms of how to open this discussion, first of all, I think all four candidates came very prepared. They did a great job. We're done the interview portion at 7:00, which is great. I'd kind of like to open it up and just go around and see what people's thoughts are. And then ideally what I'd like to have happen here, and I could be speaking out of turn, but we put forth, one nomination and we vote on it, because by charter, the candidate has to have 5 votes. So we can't have an election where we vote. And I think you all have done this before, and I've only done it once. So we kind of discuss, somebody makes a nomination, and we vote. How does that sound, everybody? Does that sound right? Like what we've done before? Okay, good. All right. I too studied for the meeting. All right, so I'm going to open up the floor. Anybody who would like to speak? Nobody ever wants to go first. Colleen wants to go first.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, let's go first.
Welcome to our meetings.
we fight for first.
I have a question.
I got
How many
mocked.
current school committee members work within a school system?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just one?
Just
Oh.
one.
Okay.
Correct. That's a good question. You want to tell her what you do?
I am a math teacher at the high school, at a high school, not Grafton High School. But I was in education for many years, and then I stayed home for a long time, and then I just volunteered, and then just went back probably the last 3 years. So,
I
Great.
imagine it's an asset having members that are familiar with the system, but I wouldn't want to flood the committee if you guys already had a lot of people either.
Right.
Thank you.
No, we have a PR, a lawyer, and a homemaker with a degree in writing, but I don't use that much.
I also make a
Yes, you
home
do.
sometimes. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I don't.
Fine.
Matt's laughing, so I don't.
All right, now we're fighting for it.
No,
All right.
I'm gonna, all right.
Go
you don't
around.
need to raise hands. I mean,
Okay.
it's okay. I'll go with Miss Spinney. Go
All
ahead.
right, I'll try to coordinate here. Okay, so I'm going to start with Rebecca, because she surprised me, and I like that. She had no notes. She was speaking completely off the cuff, and that says something to me. I'm not sure she's my number one but I really liked what she had. I thought she spoke very well. She was friendly, personable, seemed to have looked at our policies, had done her research, knew what was going on online and the conversations. I liked that she was concerned about things that are, I think, really important in our schools, the mental health of students, looking for creative solutions. She I liked that she asked 2 questions. She was the only one that asked 2 questions. She sounded like she was really enthusiastic and wanted to dig in. And, you know, like I mentioned in my answer to one of the questions, I, want to see someone who's willing to do the work. And it seemed like she already, you could kind of see the gears turning where she was ready to dig in and do some work behind the scenes and help us in many ways. So I liked her. I liked Graciela. I thought her experience, just 20 years in education, came from a family of educators. She talked about how she loves school. She just seemed like someone who her whole life is about school and education. I liked some of the words that she used when she was answering her questions, things like open-minded, team-oriented, working toward the common goal, compassion, enthusiasm, empathy. She talked about looking at the whole child and going back and not just answering the question about achievement, but saying, well, we need to look at what we mean by achievement. And I like that. It says to me that she was thinking sort of outside the box. And she recognized some of the, things that are difficult. I don't want to go on too long. Staci did a good job. I thought she had some good answers, but she also was reading them a lot, which kind of, that says something to me. Yeah. I think, yeah, I don't know. I was kind of thrown off. She kept looking at the paper and reading things, which I was hoping she would just talk off the cuff a little bit. I was hoping she would do that. And then Leora, I thought she did a great job too. I was kind of focused on her motivation, which was her kids, which obviously that's, it's very important. I wondered how much she would, she didn't talk much about looking at the whole school district. I liked what she had to say about special ed though, and that perspective, that there are lessons in special ed that we can expand to all students. I thought that was an interesting thing to say. And I'll leave it there for someone else. Not to talk too long.
Laura?
I thought that was great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk because this is important. I had similar thoughts. I like to think about what if I could improve our committee, who's already full of amazing, smart, talented women. What are we looking for? I think we're very fortunate to have had these 4 candidates tonight. I feel very excited about the future of Grafton and the future of this committee if these are the kind of candidates that are coming out. Regardless, we're going to have 3 people, and hopefully, they'll consider the future on the committee. So I really want to thank them for that. I think Rebecca too. I really liked her energy. I like that she has young children. I think that's one thing where we're kind of all aging up. I mean, we're not aging; our children are aging up, and it is nice to have that elementary school perspective. I don't think it's definitely like a must-have, but because we're all still very involved and active, but I think it's nice that she has the future of the kids. I loved her answer about the attributes you believe, that going outside of just what you think, and thinking about the whole town, that you represent an entire town of people, and that is important and something that sometimes a committee member can struggle with because they hear from their people a lot more. So I really liked that she did that. So that was terrific. Staci kicked us off. She obviously did her homework, and so that was great. And she has a good background. I love that she was a high school English teacher. That's terrific. So it was nice to have that education background. Again, as Colleen mentioned, I think that's a nice to have. I don't think it's a must have. Again, it brings diversity to our committee. Leora, I think another thing where we could grow as a committee is in the special ed. It is a huge portion of our budget. While I don't think we ever consider it as just a line item, I hope that's not how we ever present it, but I know that's how it can be discussed in a town, and I think she brings a really strong background in that. And I know her as a member of a community, and she definitely does think about the whole child and kids. I think when she started off, she talked about how her kids are very different. So she knows more than just special ed. I think she kind of brought that up because that's what her biggest passion is. So it came up a lot. And she also, this is Graciela. And then finally, Graciela, she brings a lot to the table. I wrote, love that on her. What do you think the school committee could do to improve student achievement? I love that she was like, achievement means so many different things. And that's something that, we talk a lot about. And Rebecca brought it up. Maybe what Rebecca didn't know was that we do measure way beyond just the standardized tests. That's not even, we don't consider that even a measurement of a child. That's more of a measurement of our curriculum and our teachers and how that's going. We use a lot of data, but I think it's very important to measure the social emotional growth of a child and their ability. And I think Graciela brings a lot to the table. Her background in mental health, and she talked a lot about equality as well and diversity. And those are strong issues that are facing us. So, yeah, I thought they were great, and those are my thoughts. And I have more thoughts, but I will let someone else speak.
Matt.
You want my thoughts? I'd like to hear from you first. I kind of thought it'd be good to hear from school committee first.
Okay, sure.
Does Jennifer?
You have another one? Or you didn't go yet?
Jen didn't go
I'm
yet.
so sorry. I thought you'd go.
Like,
I'm still collecting.
So
I'm still
No,
collecting.
I think they all brought something different to the table, which is probably what we need, and it's great to see the different things that they can bring. I do feel, some might provide more balance for our committee than others, but I think they all, understood what the school committee is about, which is probably the most important thing. Like, they understand what policy, budget, and, superintendent. So I think they understood the role, which was important. And I don't think, even though they might be passionate about something, I don't feel that anyone's necessarily with an agenda, which is probably even more important. But I think one thing with Graciela, I think she provides different aspects. Like, I think she covers a lot of ground. I don't know how to say that, but she's not just a teacher. There's different things that I think she can bring, to the committee. Rebecca, same thing. I really liked her energy, and I think she also has a good perspective. Leora does a lot with the CPAC, which I think, is a missing thing that, to be passionate about it and know it well. Like, I don't know special ed very well, so it's nice to have a different perspective. And then Staci, I think she does the same thing with being a teacher, and also she has science. Was she the science?
No, it was Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Okay, so
Stacy did she's with
she's a former teacher. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And
But I think, they all kind of seem to bring something different. So I think you have to kind of look at the whole of what we think the committee could benefit from, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I'm not going to reiterate. I agree with everything that's been said, which is what makes this so hard. But from where I sit, I'm looking for the person who's the most ready to jump in and be able to be a productive committee member in a very short amount of time. They're only going to be on the committee until May 17th, unless they run and win. That doesn't leave a lot of time for onboarding. I know when I was elected, I started kind of onboarding myself prior to getting elected, but it still took me a good 6 months to a year, I would say, before I really understood a lot. And there are two candidates that I felt were probably most ready to jump in. They're already very knowledgeable. They know what's going on. They know how the system works. And I will say they are Leora and Graciela. They've been parents in the district for a while. They know our system. They know the people. They communicate with other parents. They're used to communicating with other parents, which is really, really important. I think both of them I want them both. They both bring unique perspectives that we need. I'd love to see them both run, even if that means I have to say goodbye. But if I had to choose, I can't right now. I need to listen to some more. But those are my top two. And I'll open it up to Matt. You want to go now?
Sure.
All right.
I will also try not to say things that haven't been said already. It was a little bit of a different experience with Staci being on Zoom. I hear what you were saying, Liz, about kind of reading answers, and it's just for her and for us, it was different. In some ways, I think it was a little bit easier, so she could be a little bit more comfortable at home with the answers ready. And I know how intimidating it is to be before, this horseshoe full of people. Super scary. So I give credit to everybody that came out tonight, and I was really impressed with everything that everybody had to say. I heard lots of great answers. What I was looking for, and the thing that kind of stood out to me a little bit, I felt like Rebecca and Graciela just had this passion for education. Like they were grounded in it. They bled education, and they were just into it. Really, dug it as a not like an academic thing, or just it was kind of in their blood. So, and I think both of them had kind of that diversity of thought. I really liked Graciela's focus on mental health issues and her, if we think about the skill set that comes to the school committee, I think she's pretty well rounded in terms of her technical skill set, understanding of how public education works, and I think we're really going to need some creativity and some knowledge as far as mental health services in the coming years. So I think about it both as short and long term. I totally hear what you're saying, Amy, about being able to hit the ground running, but I think she's one of the candidates that could do that. So I thought they both brought a lot to the table that I liked.
Want me to go?
Good.
Yeah, okay. Again, try not to repeat what everybody said. I agreed with a lot of what Liz said a little earlier, particularly about Rebecca. And in terms of the fact that she surprised me the most, I think of all the candidates, she came in without any papers, was able to answer questions, show her passion. I feel like she's a person who, I like the fact that she has children entering the education school, which, from my perspective is sort of filling a gap on your committee in terms of, representation of each school. So, but that aside, just a great demeanor and a different perspective. And I feel, as someone who's not on the school committee, that she would serve your committee well. But to Amy's point too, which I'm taking into consideration, is hitting the ground running, and in terms of who could have more impact. And I think my other choice was Leora, who wasn't brought up as much as anyone's favorite, I think, except Amy. And again, I'm bringing a perspective of someone who doesn't sit on school committee. So, I think she's authentic. I think she did a great job interviewing. She seems really well informed and qualified. I liked her, how she sort of bridged what she does in her day job to how she can bring that in terms of policy and also just her knowledge in special education and her passion for that and her firsthand knowledge. I actually really like that, and it resonated with me for someone who is going to, try to maybe drive some other policies that she sees, and make an impact in a short amount of time. I also, again, speaking as a select board member, really like my question, particularly about like local taxpayer burden. I feel like she did a great job answering that, and she seemed to really understand. She talked about institutional or instructional based versus things like health insurance, you know, like balancing the budget and understanding things that cannot change in a budget and places that maybe can change. And so I feel like she, from the interview, seemed the most up to speed to me on how to come into a committee like this and really understand and contribute, like hit the ground running in terms of like being a worker and understanding what she needs to do. I really liked Graciela as well. I think her passion showed through. It's hard for me to not throw her in the mix. I just like, as we sort of wind down, like I would say my top two are Leora and Rebecca, but I have nothing but great things to say about Graciela. Staci, I think she answered her questions really well, and as I was taking notes, it just felt a little robotic to me being on Zoom and reading notes. I certainly don't want to dismiss the fact that she would be well qualified for this committee. It was just harder to get a read on her for me, so I don't have her as a top candidate. I'll leave it at that.
So I'm just gonna go with my favorite candidate, and that's Garciela. I think she would be a strong candidate for the school committee. She would bring that educational component, that it's not oversaturated. At one point, she literally said, "I love school." I mean, that was, her passion was just obvious, and that's who I would support.
Ray?
Yes, the last time I attended a meeting like this was 26 years ago, and I actually knew all the applicants. I didn't know any of these these applicants, but one thing that I did, which I've been told I'm not good at, is listen. And I listened to everything, and I think that Graciela is the number one in my book.
Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. I will not reiterate all the other qualities and characteristics that everyone here has outlined, but I will say this, you know, between the top two, in my opinion, between Graciela and Leora, I look at what candidate can at least move the needle forward in a short amount of time. And I think somebody who can hit the ground running, who understands you know, public education, but more importantly, I will say to Colleen's point, it's in their DNA, is Graciela would be my first choice as well. Thank you.
Laura.
Yeah, I just my top two were Leora and Graciela. I realized when somebody said that nobody had picked Leora. I know her passion. I mean, I do know her personally. I also but I think they're both amazing candidates. It's really hard, like you said, Amy. I'm like, maybe I should just pack up tonight and we can
There
bring
are
these
two other seats available.
these
They don't
two-
have to take mine.
These two ladies can come on in because we'd be lucky to have either. So I kind of, I know this is our job, but I kind of hate it a little bit. It's very difficult, and I'm so appreciative of everybody. Rebecca, I think she has a good future. I'd love to see her more. I thought there was a little bit too much of a learning curve. She made comments that if you had she could have maybe caught up a little bit, not to be, but I think, you know, I really loved her. I think she's got a great future. I'd love to see more of her and just get to know her. I'm sorry, I'm talking again, but this is super important.
Well,
And
can I chime in on Rebecca?
yeah,
Because I
sure.
didn't say anything about her, and I really like her.
Yeah.
I want to get to know her. I want to get her involved in the school, whatever school her child is in. You know, get her doing school advisory council, and you know, I think she would be a tremendous committee member. I just think that now is not the most appropriate time. I think she needs a couple more years maybe in the system to kind of really, you know, get to know more people, you know, that kind of thing. But I'd love to see her on a school advisory council. That's how I started, and it was a very valuable experience. But I think we're all kind of the same mind. I don't think we're going to have any arm wrestling tonight.
No. I think,
It's still.
Perhaps not.
I mean,
It's
I,
early.
We could do it afterwards anyway, just for fun, but.
You're strong.
Well, we know who's gonna win.
I'll win. I doubt it.
we've never had a school committee off. Liz Spinney is super strong.
So we have to decide who we put up.
We're gonna put up Colleen.
We're gonna put up.
Oh
Yes.
no.
Well, it's not calling.
We should do that for a fundraiser.
No.
Anyway.
Anyway,
So
Anyway.
is the committee of the mind that we take a nomination and we do
Yeah.
a vote?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carlson.
No,
what's that? Go ahead.
I'm just thinking, you're gonna make the motion for the school committee rep?
She asked.
All right,
Want
go
to make
ahead.
a motion? Would you like to do it, Ms.
Nope,
Lofton?
go ahead.
I yield the floor to you.
Make the motion.
All right, I'll do it.
Thank you.
I nominate Maria Graciela Vargas Baker to fill the empty seat on the school committee.
Second.
Motion made by Liz Spinney, seconded by Laura Often. All those in favor by roll call. And just so I don't forget, I'm going to start with Mr. Mead.
Mead, aye.
Ms. Connolly.
Connolly, aye.
Ms. Spinney.
Aye.
Ms. Often.
Aye.
Mr. Often.
Aye.
Mr. Carlson.
Aye.
Ms. Marr, aye. Ms. DeFazio.
Aye.
Ms. Roy.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion is unanimous. Maria Graciela Vargas Baker will be our new committee. And I get to go tell her.
I do hope everyone continues to find a passion and still volunteer.
I agree.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just,
Absolutely.
I don't want them to go away.
And we have elections coming up.
This was really, really hard. I didn't expect it to
agree.
be this hard.
And I just want to say, Madam Chair, too, she was not one of my first two choices, but she was like so close, and I wholeheartedly supported, my her being on the board. So,
I
or
would
the
like to-
committee rather. So,
I would like
thank
to
you.
thank the select board for your time and participation and rapt attention. Thank you for listening, Mr. Mead. I think you did a great job listening.
Pizza cake.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll take a motion for the school committee to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor by roll call, Ms. Connolly.
Connolly, aye.
Spinney.
Aye.
Often.
aye.
Marr, aye. School committee is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank
Take,
you.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you
just
for
going to
letting
take
us
a
join
5-minute recess. Everyone, and welcome back. We have now switched over to the Grafton Select Board part of the meeting. I want to again thank all the candidates who came out tonight in the school committee for vetting this process. I know it's very difficult, and it's also very courageous for people to come here in public and interview for a position, even for these few months. So as we're going down, do I have anyone from the public who would like to make a public comment before we get into the first part of our meeting? I don't see anybody here. And no one in Zoom. Okay, moving on. First order of business, we have a public hearing regarding liquor license amendments for Townhouse Tavern. If I may ask the clerk to read back the legal notice, please.
The notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that an application has been made by the Grafton Townhouse LLC, DBA Townhouse Tavern, 1 Grafton Common, Grafton, Mass. 01519, to amend its current all alcohol beverages restaurant license to include an outdoor seating serving patio at premises located at 1 Grafton Common, Grafton, Mass. 01915. Upon this application, the Grafton Select Board will hold its public meeting via Zoom on February 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. The Zoom link will be included on the posted meeting agenda 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. Declare the public hearing open. Joining us tonight, Sean Paget. Good evening, Sean. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Everything's well with me. Hope the same with you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for waiting. So you want to go ahead and just kind of give an overview of what you're seeking?
Sure. If I think most of you were on the board and might remember that we added a patio recently during COVID. At that time, we had emergency approval to do outdoor seating with COVID. At the time that you all voted to allow the patio, you said this was not a indication that you can just go ahead and use it once things are normalized again. You'll have to come back before the board and ask permission to use the outdoor space for the tavern at that time, just as any other bar or restaurant has in Grafton. So we're here doing that now.
Great. All right, I will open it up to the public. If anyone from the public would like to come in and make comment before we move on to select board. I have one person in here. I'm admitting Mr. Whitney. Rich Whitney, hi, can you hear us? You're on mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Good evening. How are you?
Okay. My opinion in this matter is it should not be granted because I believe in the original application for the town tavern that the select board in granting the license for this establishment said there would be no drinking while there was things going on at the Apple Tree theater there. And by the children going in and out of different times and when they're open, this is showing, it's going against the original application in the beginning. And I don't believe, granted they're sharing one bathroom, I don't believe this is necessary and warranted to have the outdoor drinking when there's children going in and out like that. And that was going on during COVID too. But I totally 100% against that. And I believe that doing the right thing is not granting this. That's all I got to say. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. Anyone else in the public wish to speak on this? If you just please use the raise hand function within the Zoom meeting, I can admit you into the meeting. Okay, so we heard from a member from the public. Does any of the select board members at this time have any questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Mr. Fazio?
So I just want to answer what, or comment on what Mr. Whitney just said, because I respectively disagree with his comment. I think that particularly during this time of hardship for small businesses, and not just for the businesses, but for the residents of town who want to gather in a space, that outdoor space has continued to work. I think that the building itself, although occupied by all sorts of residents, including children, this area is well barriered off. I've been by it a number of times. I actually saw some space heaters out there, which I really liked with the snow for people to sit. And I do believe that it's continues to be a good option. I do have questions, however, for Sean that I'd like to ask, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, this is fine.
And I just want to be reminded of the time when alcohol is allowed to be served out on the patio, or in general, just what the license allows. And perhaps someone else here has it. I think, oh, it's right
It
here.
doesn't
Great.
have time listed on it specifically.
Yeah,
but it
I
was
didn't.
when we issued.
Yeah, I didn't see the time on this one. So just to Mr. Whitney's point too, just wanted to know, like, what kind of overlap are we looking at if there are people in that space? And my second and maybe more important question, Sean, is I believe that this space belongs to the building and not to the Townhouse Tavern. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It wasn't part of the original lease of that space. That is correct.
So it's not necessarily part of the Townhouse Tavern lease. And we had this discussion last time about, if let's say someone in the building, another occupant of the building wanted to lease that space out for something, would that be feasible? Let's say Apple Tree Arts, for example, wanted to use that space for a day in the spring. How would that impact the tavern, and how would it impact, the building overall? And I just feel like that could be another question that comes up, and I'd like to address it.
Yeah, unfortunately I don't have a pen, so there are kind of 3 or 4 questions. Let me try to hit all of those. First, I'm not quite sure what Mr. Whitney was referring to in the original permit. I don't have any recollection of that discussion that he brought up. And second of all, he did make a, so if that is the case and there's notes or a recording of that meeting, I'd be happy to go see it. But I don't remember ever a restriction from the original permit that said there would be nothing outside or anything of that sort. And secondly, he said there was one shared bathroom for the building, and that's simply, that's not true. There are bathrooms on every floor. Third, I think, Dorian, getting to your couple of points, if I can remember them.
The timing of alcohol being served outside, and just so you can remind me.
So there were no restrictions for the times to serve alcohol. There were restrictions on the times that we could play music outside.
Yes.
But there were no restrictions. So we always assumed that it was the same sort of restrictions as the tavern.
Yep.
And I have to go back and look at exactly what it is, but I want to say the original request was, from 4 to 11 p.m. or something like that. And that's actually on our, part of our original application. We can go back and revisit that. We're not looking to change anything from the original permit is in terms of what the inside is, the time for the inside or the outside. In terms of other organizations using it, we've put out furniture and picnic tables and whatnot, and have encouraged all the tenants to use it at any time they want. Honestly, we haven't used the outside for the tavern very much or very often. It's just from a weather perspective, because we didn't have tents and we don't plan to put on tents. We didn't use the outside a lot, but we want to maintain the opportunity to use it outside, especially in the summer. We did have the Grafton Palooza out there where we had music during the day, which and it was a fundraiser. We had a silent auction. There were a lot of things going on out there on the street, and I guess that was tavern space at that time, but it was also community space. Mm-hmm. I've never said no to anyone in the building, and I think all of the tenants in the building have been very supportive and have enjoyed using that space, both as a tavern space and as just going down there to eat lunch during the day. There are times when the dance schools or when Apple Tree is open, that the tavern is also open, but it's not. The overlap isn't tremendous. We don't open till 4. There's not a lot of business before 7. There's very little activity in the rest of the building after 7, except for an occasional event. So there isn't a tremendous amount of overlap of the different tenants there. But honestly, our biggest patrons outside have been moms and dads dropping their kids at Apple Tree and the dance school.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That answers my question, and I appreciate the detailed answer, particularly around the time. And I definitely support this motion.
So before we go any further, I have 2 members of the public that wish to speak. Do we want to go ahead and ask them to speak, or Colleen, did you want to ask your question first?
No, I can wait. Let him go.
Okay. Emery Foley, good evening.
Oh.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Good
I
evening.
actually lowered my hand because Sean pretty much addressed it. I just was like, going to address Mr. Whitney's concern regarding bathrooms, and having been in the building both in Apple Tree and my daughter Irish dancing, and then being in the tavern, there are different bathrooms. So the Apple Tree Arts bathrooms are clearly upstairs, and the Townhouse Taverns are downstairs. So there's really no issue with that. That was all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have Mr. Whitney who would like to come back in.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. Hi, Rich. Can you hear us? You're on mute. There you go.
Okay. I'm sorry about the bathrooms. I thought there was only one downstairs. You can hear me, right?
Yes, yes, we
sir.
can.
Go ahead.
Okay. I apologize by that. I thought there was only one from my recollection. I'm very sorry about that. But the thing is, when the original bar went in, the tavern, if I'm not mistaken 100%, I will apologize, but I believe during the meeting when we gave the license to Mr. Pageant, that this was the bar was not supposed to be open during the time that Apple Tree was going in because of the students going in and they were underage. I believe if you look back at the original contract, that is in there. The second thing I would like to know is, as you put the patio in, does that bring your rent up, or is that part of the building? Is that more space that is rented to you or not? Those are my two questions. Can we look at the original contract in the beginning of when it's supposed to be open and when it's not supposed to be open, and, you know, about the outside? Because I care about the kids walking by and seeing somebody if they do get a little tipsy or whatever. That's number one. And I granted, yeah, after 7 o'clock, there's probably nothing there. But I'd like to see the original contract of the lease of saying, you know, this is what it's supposed to be. I'm not opposed 100%, but I'm looking out for the children that go to the Apple Tree. You understand what I'm talking about?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Whitney.
And just so I can understand a little bit more clearly, he's saying the contract and whatnot. I think, you know, hours and that sort of thing were not in either the master lease or the subleases. I think he must be referring to the special permit and the time restrictions of the special permit. And again, I don't recall any specific discussion around saying we wouldn't be open when Apple Tree was open. I think we probably had a discussion similar to what we just said, which is the timing of the two, the majority of the use of the two spaces kind of have different, different calendars. But I don't remember any specific requirement that tied the tavern opening to the Apple Tree or any of the other dance studios or that sort of thing. You know, with regard to the rent, you'll recall that the master tenant, One Grafton Common LLC is the master tenant that manages the building, and then the tavern leases portion of the building from One Grafton Common LLC. So the tavern doesn't lease directly from the town, if that makes sense. The tavern entity paid for all of the patio and everything that went with it in terms of, you know, electrical and the doorway and all that sort of thing. And there was no specific change to the lease that the tavern pays to One Grafton LLC because of that. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Mr. Paget. Ms. Roy?
So I gotta be honest, I was a little surprised to see this on the agenda tonight, and I went back and I rewatched the August 3rd meeting when you were in asking to build the patio, and the way it was kind of presented at that time was, hey, we have this extra material, I thought it would look nice, we understand we're taking a risk, we understand we don't have right to use this space. You went on and talked about how the other tenants in the building really enjoy using this space and really sold us on the idea that this is a common area. You said things specifically like you don't plan to run your business outside because of the nature of your business. You don't offer a full menu. You told the board at the time you did not plan to amend any permits to use this space. And the board expressed wanting to hear from the other tenants as well about if that ever did happen, how it would affect them. So I guess I'm just a little surprised because of how it started and how it's creeping into this area where we were all kind of worried about before you built the patio, and now we're here having this conversation.
I'd like to just respond to that. My recollection is different. I haven't gone back and looked at any tapes because I don't think I have access to them. But
They're all
in
online.
any event, what I intended to say and what I believe I said was that we understand we're taking a risk for sure because we were building the patio knowing that we could use it by virtue of the COVID related emergency, whatever you call it, the emergency allowable use. And what I believe I said is that if we wanted to continue to use it afterwards, we would have to come before the board just as any other bar or restaurant would and come to you and ask you for that at that point. I don't remember at that time either that it was requested to me if we were to come before you that we were to bring the tenants along. If I had known that, I'd be happy to have asked them for letters or I'm sure any one of them probably would have been happy to speak tonight too. But if it's helpful, I can ask them to provide letters to the select board.
So the other question I have is there's a Sydney Paget listed on the liquor license itself. It's Grafton Townhouse LLC, Sydney Teresa Paget. I don't see her here tonight. I don't know what involvement she would need to have on the changing of this license. And did we get any input from the police chief on what his thoughts are on extending this outdoors?
I can answer the first question. Sydney's my niece and she manages the bar. As far as I know, it's not required that she has to come and be the one to speak. And as an owner of the tavern, I felt that it was just fine for me to do the talking. And if you'd like to hear from her, we can certainly make that happen. In terms of getting information from the chief, I didn't know I was required or expected to get any opinion from the chief, but again, I could go ask him. I've had many discussions with the chief about the space and how to use the space and whatnot in the context of events. I've never asked him specifically what his opinion was, whether or not he supports or has any reason not to support having the patio used the way it's been used in the last year or so. There's another patio directly across the common that is used in a very similar way. As far as I know, I know for sure that we haven't had any events or incidents in any way that involved the police or should have involved the police. And as far as I know, they haven't at the inn either. But again, if you'd like us to go gather information from the chief, we can do that.
Evan, did you?
The chief had no comments. He was asked. It's part of our normal process. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Ray?
Yeah, Peter. Thanks. Sean, you received I got a couple questions. You received a special permit from the planning board?
When we built the tavern?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not familiar.
So complicated. I can't remember what we did.
Yeah, I know.
There were so many meetings.
So I'm not familiar with that special permit, but wouldn't you have to go back to the planning board before to alter your special permit prior to coming to the board to alter your liquor license?
I don't know. That's a good
I think you
question.
would.
I'm not sure.
I think he does. I think
you would.
The Grafton Grill
So-
did that.
Yeah, I think you would. And so, you know, really at this point, I'm not sure that this board can alter a liquor license without having a special permit altered to bring into account the space that's going to be used.
Mr. Mead, if I may also comment on that too, that was a question that I came up with as well, because I recall one of my comments, and Colleen, you watched it more recently. I asked that if this were to become a permanent component, like what process would you have to do to codify it with all the other, boards in Grafton? And I thought planning or ZBA or somebody would have to have something, because the reason why we were able to create that space and utilize that space in its capacity was because of COVID-19 emergency allowed the use of parking or other ancillary property within the confines of the restaurant establishment to be able to get some relief from maintain social distancing and have events outside. So I thought we did a really good job, and I thought that when we approved this, that was under the condition. But Mr. Paget, I would agree with Mr. Mead on that it may be premature for us tonight, and I'll ask the rest of the board what it wants to do, but as we're starting this public hearing process, that maybe we do some additional due diligence, Sean, and it might take just a few days to kind of go through that.
Sure.
And let's get the comments and some information from Evan and get that back to the board. And what I would recommend we do, unless there isn't any other question regarding this, but
I have another question, Peter.
Okay, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah. So the other thing that we need to look at is that we're being asked to transfer, and I know that we've already kind of already done it, but we're asking for a permanent liquor license amendment to a piece of property that is not owned or leased by the tenant. So and Sean, that's just another thing that, between the special permit and then allowing us to transfer or amend a license to a piece of property that you don't lease or own, which I don't think we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just another thing to get worked out. That's all.
No, honestly, I hadn't really thought about that. So I think I'm hearing, it sounds like it might need an amendment to the lease, and potentially, depending upon what Evan finds out, in talking, or what we find out in talking to the planning board, and I guess the zoning officer, that we may have to get an approval from the planning board first.
Yep. And I would be in favor of continuing this public hearing until you find that information.
Okay, that was going to be my suggestion, Mr. Mead. Before we continue, Evan, I know had his hand up. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would continue. I would ask the board to continue, and I would do that because we did reach out to planning for comment.
Okay.
That was one of the departments that was pretty much wiped out for the past week and a half. So we do not have our full response of what they think was needed. So if you could, the application had already been accepted. If you could continue, we will work with planning and zoning to get Mr. Paget all the information that he'll need so that we can get these dominoes lined up and go in the direction you need to go.
Is the board okay with that?
Yes.
All right.
I have a quick question though, just for the board or Evan, on the process. Ray, maybe you can answer this because it was your question. So one of the reasons I asked who owned the patio and wanted to confirm that it wasn't the tavern, that it was the building, is because I thought the special permit process would be different. Is that true? Or are we looking at the the patio becoming part of the tavern? Because those are two different conversations, and I just want to be clear on what we're doing.
Yeah, well, the special permit, and again, I did not, I haven't read the special permit, but I'm assuming that it was a use and business special permit, and that it was in that special permit should be restricted to the location that was presented in the special permit. So now if the patio was not presented within that special permit, then that has to be amended.
Okay. So, Sean, just to follow up on that, is it your intention to add the space to the Townhouse Tavern lease, or keep it as part of One Grafton Common LLC and get a special permit for the building?
Yeah, I didn't have an intention because
sorry.
I never really thought about all this.
So-
but I think the way I would answer that is, in order for this to be super clean, or to do it the right way, I think we'd have to go back, amend the lease between One Grafton LLC and Townhouse Tavern to include the right to use the patio, and at that point go back to or take that with us when we went to the planning board, if Ray's right, and thinking it through, it sounds like he is right. Frankly, I didn't think about it, but bring that to the planning board when we go, and then ask them to amend a special permit, or however that works, create a new special permit, or whatever the requirement is, to ask them to allow us to use the patio.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we don't tie you up longer than we need to.
Evan?
And I would also say, just, I'll be careful as to how I amend the lease, because, honestly, we really don't use that patio for the tavern very often or very much, and we don't really have the intent to, although, who knows what could happen, right? Like to date, there hasn't been a lot of demand for it. I suppose that could change in the future, but so I don't want to be caught by someone coming back next time and saying, hey, you told us you didn't intend to spend more time out there. I don't know what customers are going to want. But I will say that, however it works out, the intent won't be, and our process won't be, to make it so that people can't use that patio when the tavern is closed, right? We want that to be used by the tenants of the building.
Can they use it when the tavern is open, though? If this goes through how you envision it going through, would the tenants still be able to use that area when the tavern is open? Because right now it's a common area.
No, you wouldn't be able to do that because they're serving alcohol out there, and you have to have a defined border. You can't have people just like wandering in and out. I think that would be part of
Yeah,
it. Would be
Which
problematic.
they do have that today.
The major difference between the emergency, my understanding, the major difference between the emergency use of the patio versus if it were, an already an approved portion of, like the way it is with, let's just use the end because it's across the street, is that under the emergency orders, you can go in and out that gate, and then go into the tavern and out of the tavern. If this is approved, once this were part of the tavern use, when the tavern was open, we'd have to lock that gate so people could only get in and out of the patio through the tavern. So to the extent that people wanted to use that space when the tavern is open, they'd have to go through the tavern door, and then out through the patio door in order to get in there and use it, is my understanding.
Mr. Bresser?
I was just going to suggest that we circle back with the staff and let them guide that process for you.
Chair.
So I think that there's a lot of things that are unique in this that we're probably going to have conversation about to make sure that this can be done the way that Sean has envisioned it being done, and to do it as efficiently as possible. So I'm sure there's a way, but let's let us go back and get those staff together, and then could probably just do a call with Sean separately, with just the staff and
Okay.
Sean, and try to work that out, and then bring back a process to you folks.
Okay.
So do you need a motion to continue?
I just have one last person who's had their hand up for the past 10 minutes. Mr. Whitney would like to speak, but we can let him speak and then let's continue the.
Sounds good. I think we should also, if we have any other information we need for when we resume the public hearing, let's just all say what we need, because there was a few things kind of articulated tonight, I think.
Mr. Whitney,
Yes.
we're going to continue this public hearing. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay, I understand that. I heard the whole thing. I agree with Sean. I agree with Ray and everybody else. The only thing I would ask for is if we could bring up the original lease about what times it's supposed to be open, and if it's open with the children being there, just to go over that to make sure we're covering our bases 100%. If that's okay with you, Sean.
Yeah, of course. And just again to clarify, when you say lease, I think you mean permit,
Yeah, special.
because it's
Yeah.
not in the lease. It's a
Permitted, say, from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, but there's classes going on from 4 to 7. You can't use the outside patio. You know what I'm saying? Just to keep the people that are drinking away from the people that are not drinking, the children. Just want to make sure, because I believe 100% that when we had the meeting, when you opened up the tavern, there was a clause in there, there was wording in there that when Apple Tree was having stuff, you could not be open.
no, that's
I
not.
just want to make sure 100% before we go forward.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Whitney.
Yep.
Okay. I'll take a motion to continue the public hearing.
I make a motion that we continue the public hearing for the liquor license amendment for the Townhouse Tavern.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on that motion to continue the public hearing? Hearing none. All those
Just
by.
one.
Sorry.
I know at least on planning board, they have to have a date to continue to. Do we need that?
But we can
I don't.
just-
I don't believe so.
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Not that I've ever been aware of.
All right, then let's vote.
Not for liquor license.
Because I don't think there's a time limit to this.
Yeah, the planning board has 120 days. They have certain time restrictions we don't have.
Okay.
Any further discussion on continuing the public hearing? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. We'll continue this public hearing. Sean, thank you very much for coming in tonight and explaining this. We'll see what we need to do to get you back here.
Sounds great. I appreciate it, and just apologize, Ray. I never even thought about going back to the original permit. I should have thought about that, having been on the planning board at one time. But
Yeah, no problem, Sean.
apologies. Look forward to talking again. Thank you.
Have
Thanks,
a great
Sean.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring that back. We've tabled the Snow Road development. However, another development has come up, and with the committee's permission, I would like to table this for the February 15th meeting. So we would like to push that schedule out. There's some technical information that we need to get back from the people coming in and seeking that development. Next up is we have emergency medical services contract. So this, I believe, is ambulance contract
Correct.
that the town of Grafton has. Evan, do you want to take the lead on this?
No, Ray, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, sure. So this is the same contract that we've had for many, many years. We actually, we're in our 7th year of the existing contract, and it's due to roll over on June 30th. We have paramedic level service in Grafton for $0. And it's the same contract that we had before. Nothing's changed. And they provide a great service, and it's free. So I would encourage the board to vote to sign the new contract.
All right, any questions from the board?
Just a quick one. So, what's the deal, Ray?
So then-
You don't get
so then-
anything for free, so
Oh, yeah, no, you know what, Matt? So let me just go back. So I've been chairman of the ambulance committee since 1986. And we've been through 4 different EMS companies in that time. The last fee that we actually paid, and it was to MedStar Ambulance, was $103,000. And that provided us with ambulance service, paramedic level ambulance service. It was negotiated about 6.5, 7 years ago to a 0 fee. So as we used to pay 103,000, we pay 0. We provide a place for the ambulance, which is in Station 1, sleeping quarters, and we have 27 ambulances on backup. Milbury gets the exact same deal, 0 fee, and Sutton pays $95,000. And that's all based on the amount of calls that each town has. So yes, it has been free for the last 7 years, and it will be free with this contract for the next 5.
So, I mean, great contract. I love that it's no cost. So we're providing some storage and supplies and whatnot.
No, we don't provide any supplies. They provide all their supplies. We provide the garaging and the sleeping quarters.
Okay.
They also provide first responder and CPR training for police,
Yep.
Town agencies, and fire.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, Doreen?
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. First of all, I think this is a great service for the town. I'm thrilled that it's $0 as well. It's hard to believe, so I'm glad Matt asked that question. But I think it also helps out our fire and police department, as you just mentioned, Ray. It sort of takes off a little bit of pressure on them too. It's like having an additional service at no cost. So I definitely support it. Just one administrative thing, and I can't believe I'm saying this instead of you, but on the signature page, it says Town of Grafton Board of Selectmen, and Sutton it says Select Board, and so I just want Grafton's also changed to say Select Board for our signatures when it's that time.
I thought we asked for that to change actually on that.
I believe
on
we
that
did, Ray. We
document.
must have just missed it in the final
Yeah,
draft.
yeah.
Ray, just one last question, or a couple. Who's our liaison to MedStar?
Mark Olson.
Yes. Mark Olson is the CEO of MedStar Ambulance. And there's also, I think, Greg, who is the on the road supervisor.
Okay. And who reviews the quality reports that we get on a monthly basis? So,
I do, and normally the ambulance committee does, but the ambulance committee needs to be re-upped because right now Evan and I are the only ones on it. So
got it. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to.
so two more members. But.
Everything in the contract was great. I was just wondering who was sort of keeping a handle on the quality of the service and making sure that the response times and whatnot were what they're supposed to be and all that. So what I'm hearing is you've been reviewing that. You feel confident in the service
And
levels
and Chief Crapo reviews them all. I'm sorry, Chief Crapo is on the ambulance committee, but he reviews those all the time and is in direct contact with them all the time. I talk with Mark probably every 60 days.
Oh,
and
okay,
it's
fantastic.
more of an update.
Great.
So.
all right. If we need to fill that committee out a little bit, let's just get that on the agenda.
Agree.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the contract? All right, I'll take a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the agreement between the town of Grafton and MedStar Ambulances, Inc. for the emergency medical services.
Second.
Motion made in second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead.
Mead, aye.
Mr. Often.
Often aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. We'll make that one change on the signature page, and we'll have that available at one of the next meetings for us to sign. All right, next up, Greater Grafton MRC, Medical Reserve Corps.
Yeah, so this is a semi-long-standing contract that you folks have had, forming the Greater Grafton MRC in a partnership with Worcester. This is largely unchanged, this contract. Total amount of the contract is $16,870. I have met with Mary Ann DeVries, who is our MRC coordinator. Feels very comfortable with this contract and setup, and really it's just maintaining what's been working for the last several years. The previous contracts were signed by the town administrator. However, Worcester now has a segment in it that we have to have a date in which the board actually voted and allowed me to sign the contract. So that's what we are doing here today. I recommend that we move forward with it. It's pretty straightforward.
Any questions for Evan? So we need a motion, but you just need to make sure that we're saying the motion that we're approving you to sign this contract.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion?
Sure. So I move the board vote to approve. This is the subrecipient agreement.
Correct.
The subrecipient agreement with the City of Worcester Department of Health and Human Services, and approve the town administrator to sign on our behalf.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Upton?
Upton, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Carlson, I declare motion carried. Thank you. All right, next up was town administrator evaluation. So I've supplied to everyone in the select board here tonight a copy of just everyone's responses. Compiled copy. Evan, do you have a? Would someone be so kind to pass that to Mr. Brasser? So what I've done is I've taken each one of the respondents, there was 5 of us, and basically attached them into a single document with your scores and your responses, and then your written comments. At the last page, I have tabulated all of the scores based on the instructions of the sheet, and with the exception of one minor typographical error on my sheet, I think Ms. Roy pointing that out to me for the meeting. Thank you very much for doing that. Having another set of eyes is great. That out of this draft here tonight, I wanted to just mention that out of all of the tabulated scores, Evan had an average eval score of 85.33% out of 20 questions that were mentioned in this form. Something we did a little bit different this year, we were invited to reach out to department heads, and I want to say that was extremely insightful and beneficial for me for filling out this evaluation, and I personally want to thank Evan for your suggestion and for us taking up that opportunity. I think that's a great way, I think, going forward for all evaluations. So besides that, does anybody have any questions or comments? Does anyone want to mention anything that they may have written that they would like to make note of? I'll leave this open to you guys.
Well, I will say I went through and I was looking at everybody's written comments, and I was confused that there wasn't everybody's department head feedback section, because I was looking for that. So I think maybe next time making sure that that's a section on the form, so it's very clear that that's what that's intended to do. Because like you said, it was very beneficial to reach out to department heads and to note that feedback, I think, is important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so better defining of how to use that information. Okay.
Just a quick one for me. Talking to the department head was one of my favorite parts of it. I'd like a second to get more perspective, if that's possible next time, to just, because I felt like I was getting one perspective from a department head, and it would have been good to be able to compare that myself with commentary from another. But that was a lot of rich information that I got from that conversation. It was really productive. It's difficult as a board member sometimes with a full-time job to have a good sense of what happens here at the Muni Center, especially in COVID. So that for me was just invaluable. So a great suggestion.
Very good. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Doreen?
I'll chime in and say I felt the same way. I felt like the insight helped me change my perspective on things, but also enabled me to confirm things that I thought were true. And I would like to see more of that. And to Colleen's point, the way I wrote it out was I incorporated those into my answer. But next time around, if we decide to have a separate, you know, comment section, that would also be helpful. And probably reading other people's, that would be helpful to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but yeah, again, it was great.
If we could go back to 1 through 5 too, that would be, because I just feel like there's no wiggle room with 1 through 3.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I said, look, we tried different things every year, and I knew that, as I was going through the process, that I felt that having a 1 through 5 scoring metric was, there were some areas where I wanted to score 4, but I scored a 3, because I thought like the job was done really well in one of those questions, and I had some material to really, back that up. So I would like to see that too.
So I think I would support that too. Also just being a little bit more descriptive in terms of what a 1 is versus a 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
So that those things are very clear. I did find myself in this weird position saying, I think he's doing a good job, but is it outstanding? Is it like above and beyond?
Yeah.
So I was defaulting a little bit more, it looked like, than other board members to the 2, which is good performance. So yeah, I don't know, just a little bit more discussion maybe before we do this next time on, the criteria for what's a 1 versus a 5 would be good.
Right?
Yeah, I think that the 1 through 5 is essential. I had said that before, and was kind of confused as to why we had 3 when it showed up. Because Evan does a great job. I talked to him about it the other day. Speaking with the department heads, I thought was fantastic. Great insight. I got to learn some things about him that he probably doesn't even know. But
That's probably accurate.
but and I'll end it with this, and this is in my general comments. He serves the town very well and has proven to be the right choice for Grafton.
Well said. I would agree with that, right? So tonight, if anyone would want to read a portion of their comments, or what I would ask the board to consider tonight is to approve this draft. I would like to send this off just from a formatting perspective, to have the fonts all fixed, spacing and all that sort of thing. I really didn't do that. I left everything pretty much as is. And if I have the board's permission, we can send that off and then have that filed away with the final document.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the draft of the evaluation?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any discussion on the motion accepting Evan's evaluation?
Just one. Do people read this? I know this part of it's confusing to me. Does this become a public, and where does that go? Like in our minutes?
Where did we put it last time? The 6 month.
If I had to guess, I would say the minutes.
Yeah.
I can go back.
We can double check on where you put it.
Okay.
I didn't
tell you where I put mine, Evan.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was gonna call you to tell you that tomorrow, right? But
There was a delay with that joke. That was good.
no, I don't recall where we attached it last time.
Okay.
So I'll have to just. Actually, I didn't do any of it, so I don't know top of mind.
No problem.
So let me ask. We'll ask Cindy. Cindy knows everything.
We'll find out and just send that out as a memo to the board where that was located last time.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on accepting this as draft form? As is?
Can I see that? Can I see that?
Hearing no further discussion, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. Clear motion carried. Thank you very much, everyone, for getting those done, and appreciate it. All right, next up, we have a resignation from the IT committee.
I move the board vote to acknowledge the resignation of William Jones from the IT committee effective January 15th, 2022, and send him a letter of thanks.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on the motion? Just wanted to say one thing. I've known Bill since the inception of that committee. He's been on it for a really long time. I'm sure he's busy with work and his job and stuff, but I want to appreciate his guidance and efforts towards helping Grafton's IT committee as one of the first members to volunteer his time. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Next up, we have a select board appointment here for an election worker.
I move the board vote to appoint William Chasen as an election worker for the town of Grafton.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion for appointment? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried. We have no appointments for town administrator. We won't have any new business tonight. Select board reports. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add? Colleen?
So CIPC has met twice since the select board last met. We first met with the town administrator who reviewed the onboarding of ClearGov and how the capital process will work going forward. We plan to meet again next week to do a deeper dive into reviewing the submissions and the capital plan. Their second meeting was a joint meeting with CPC, who invited CIPC in to help, continue building that relationship between the two committees. We reviewed the CPC process and discussed how it can be captured into the capital process to further highlight all the projects that they fund. The Fire Chief Search Committee met with BadgeQuest and updated the job posting for the Fire Chief. That went up last week, and the committee will meet again in a month to review all the applicants. And the MMA conference was virtual, and I attended a fiscal outlook webinar that was hosted last week. And I plan to attend the MBTA community guidance and creative placemaking webinars this week.
Me too.
It's gonna be good ones. Tomorrow.
All right. Anyone else have any select board reports? Ray, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. All right, moving on here. Town administrator report. So we had a request here to get an ARPA, the American Recovery Act, and I just placed this here. So Evan, if you would like to give an update, I think some of us may have some questions.
Sure. So we are meeting again as a group, I think, closer to the end of February after we get the initial budget block out of the way, with our consultant at the same time. We will be, from a town perspective and a school perspective, we'll be bringing forward some projects that we think should be funded sooner rather than later due to their timeframes. And we had talked about that need briefly at the last ARPA meeting, but it's something that needs to be kind of discussed in greater depth. I anticipate that some of that will be around nursing in the school department. That is a allowable ARPA use, and it has a finite shelf life. We're going to be talking about some HVAC projects, and then there's other stuff that we think that are that are in our capital plan that also fit into ARPA. So we're going to have some of those conversations. Whether or not the committee is open to that is, subject to the committee meeting. But that's really our intent, is to move some of that forward. Because like some of these projects, like if we're talking school HVAC, with the supply chain being what it is, if you want to do any of that work in the summer, you're ordering this stuff in March and hoping that you can actually do it in the summer. So we have been talking about that quite a bit. I was going to roll ARPA into budget, but if we have specific ARPA questions, I can take them now, or I can roll them do it at the end, whatever.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So the ARPA committee is an advisory committee, correct? So what if they don't support something that really just needs to happen?
So if that were the case, I as town administrator or Dr. Cummings as superintendent could petition the select board to take action outside of the committee.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but
And I don't anticipate that at all. Knowing the group that we have put together, really pragmatic group that works well together, I don't foresee that being the case. Nor is there anything on there or that we're going to be discussing that, if the committee was split on or voted no on, I would not be best practice to work around that. That the whole point of the committee is to get that input. So I just don't foresee that happening. I think we're all pretty much rowing in the same direction.
right.
Is that the only ARPA question for right now? Okay.
For now, yes.
So the last, month maybe, we've been spending significant time on the budget, building our capital plan, building our budget book, and then I've met with all but, I think I have 2 department heads left for initial one-on-one budget review that'll be done this week. And then the budget is pretty close to set as of today. Minor revisions, some tweaks, we're moving things around and working on revenue. Our final, not our final, but our last meeting before budget presentation with the school committee, school department is tomorrow. That has been going fantastic. I can't thank Anita and Dr. Cummings enough. It's been a real pleasure to work with them on the budget. I think we're like-minded people and want the same outcomes, so it makes it a little easier. We are starting to get some more robust budget numbers in that we're conservatively factoring in. Revenue is the hardest part right now, to be honest with you. It's not that hard to create a municipal budget, to be quite honest with you. It's hard to make sure your revenue is going to cover what it is that you're trying to accomplish. That's always my biggest challenge. And so we're going to continue to work on that. We also have been spending a considerable amount of time on the budget book. The budget book is entirely new this year. It's all online. You can print it out and make it in a PDF form and a solid book and all that stuff, but primarily it lives online and everything is nested tables and stuff. So we've really been working on that data presentation. We're working on org charts, all kinds of things like that. So I don't believe that this budget is going to be, GFOA, budget book of the year type of worthy, but I think that by our next budget cycle we'll be right there, because we've done a considerable amount of work just in the short time that we've been building that. And as far as capital goes, we've moved a couple things. Colleen mentioned that CIPC met with CPC, a lot of C's in there. And it was suggested that we move one of our projects for the painting of the exterior of South Grafton Community House over to a CPC grant, so we were able to get that applied for on Friday. I created a project page you can actually see on ClearGov that shows pictures of it and all that stuff. And so that's great. We moved $50,000 out of the capital plan and into that grant pipeline. And there's a couple other tweaks, but otherwise that's set to go as well. So it'll be all set for next week when we meet with CIPC again. So, and CIPC's been great and giving me some latitude as we figure out how all this works, because it's totally new and it's it's just different. So I think it's all coming together. I'm very pleased with it, and department heads have been great. So,
any questions?
Just a quick one. So there's a pretty big uplift in the cherry sheet on the chapter 70. Is that pretty much, is that a solid number now?
We are going to talk about that tomorrow. I anticipate if I have my way, we would treat that as a solid number.
Okay.
And realize some of the budget efficiencies that we've already been after to give ourselves wiggle room should that number deflate a little bit. But from what I'm hearing out of the House and Senate, they're optimistic that that's a number, which is awesome and shocking at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big surprise.
Yeah, it's it's an about time number.
Well, and I would say it's too little too late too.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
thanks, but
Yeah.
where's this been all along?
Yeah, I'm of the mind. Thank you. I'll just take it and I'll put it in the budget.
Sure.
But no, that chapter 70 number is great. Our UGA number is looking pretty good too. So it's actually much different conversation than it was last week with the chapter 70 number rolling out. So,
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
How about MJ's Market? Do we have any kind of estimates in terms of?
So I am currently budgeting 120,000 for revenue. That's their minimum contribution.
Okay.
I think that's the safest way to go, quite
Sure.
frankly, and
I
then
agree.
we'll see what we have for revenue.
Okay.
If they do great, awesome. We were under, we were too conservative. I'll take that all day as opposed to, trying to guess, because we don't have enough data to have a track record.
Okay. Got it.
So that's what I'm planning on doing.
Got it.
Great.
So
I would be really interested in knowing how the budget gets solidified, especially around the contributions for retirement and for healthcare.
Mhm.
I know that's something that we were all pretty concerned with the other week, but I do know that the additional monies coming in from the state are helping offset some of those costs. But I do think it's important that we recognize and notice these huge outliers
Mhm.
that we typically see in 4% or so,
right.
and seeing it double. I think it's definitely worth our attention.
Yeah, I agree. So I plan on my budget presentation. My initial thoughts are that we'll open the presentation. I'll do a kind of 35,000-foot view of ClearGov and what we've been doing in there. Then we'll switch back to a PowerPoint, and in that PowerPoint there will be a slide on these outliers that are driving, tremendous cost, but are semi beyond our control. And how do we deal with those, and what are our long-term prospects of getting that under control? Is it looking at different services? I mean, some of it, pensions is, it's really out of our control, unfortunately.
Yep.
But yes, I plan on calling those out specifically in the presentation so that we can make sure we're raising awareness on that.
Any other questions for Evan? Thank you for addressing it with me. All right.
Absolutely, thank you.
Moving on, does anyone have any question of the correspondence that we received for the past couple of weeks? Received some things from mosquito control. It's all in their packet here, but any questions from the board? Okay, moving on here. First up, discussion. Review and discuss EDC charge. As if you guys recall, we've had a couple of meetings. So presented in front of us tonight were some of those changes that we discussed from our last meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this draft?
I'd like to talk about the membership a little bit. I really do think that we need another member on there, and I know finance committee member was supported to be removed, but I'd like to see maybe a ZBA member be added then. Maybe remove one of the business owners and add a ZBA member.
That's interesting.
How come?
I just think that they could have some insight on other ways to help drive that conversation of how we can bring in economic development, that new economic development that we're looking for. I think members at large can easily be business owners, so I don't think we need to carve out 2 spots specifically for business owners. And I think that would just give it, just having more representation I just think would be a stronger committee.
So you're saying remove one of the business owners
Yeah.
and replace it?
With 1 ZBA. So it'd be 1 business owner, 1 ZBA, 3 members at large.
And 1 planning.
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually really like that idea. I'd never thought about adding ZBA to that, but I can see your point where that could be beneficial, especially because ZBA is the only board and committee we have that breaks the law legally. If that makes sense. At least that's what was told to me. No, but they have a big important job, I know, especially around pre-existing non-conforming lots and being able to make things work in that process. So
Zoning is a huge driver of economic.
it really is,
Yes.
yeah. And if you've got a real effective community leadership in those boards, then it does attract. To your point, it attracts more businesses. I can't believe we didn't think of that until now. Thank you.
We just thought of it.
That's what I said, but until now, thank you. Yeah. All right.
All right, so we're done.
All right, let's go home.
So let's consideration of removing 2 business owner, putting it to 1, but then adding a representative from the ZBA. Okay.
So, can I comment on it, please? I am in favor of having a ZBA member. I don't know how comfortable I feel with just having 1 business owner represent the business community. I guess it would depend on who it is, but I would be more in favor of removing one of the members at large and having 2 members at large, 2 business owners, because I feel like the experience of businesses in town will also play a big role in the discussions of economic development. From my perspective, and Ray would probably have a good perspective on this, but as someone who sat on EDC, I felt like that information was valuable. And so I just don't want to lose that because we've already cut business owners out of the charge and we're cutting it again. And I just, again, depending on who that that representation is, could really change the dynamics of this commission. So I am more in favor of keeping the 2 business owners and having 2 members at large and then adding the ZBA.
And I would agree with that too.
So I guess my response to that would be that this committee isn't just supposed to be a representation of business owners. It's supposed to be a think tank on how to bring in more business, and members at large can easily be business owners when we think that the committee needs to be focusing or be more like-minded at that time. And as we've said, that we think that this could grow and change over, 12, 18, 24 months, and the membership will change. So that's just my thought, is we don't want it to be just a representation of business owners. We really want people to be moving the dial and thinking differently. And to do that, you got to really shake it up instead of doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that you and I have fundamentally different ideas of economic development, which is fine, which is great, because this is how we've had this discussion. And I think there's room on the commission to do both. I think driving new growth is the most important charge of the commission, but I also would like to see representation of our current businesses in Grafton, because I think that supporting them, and again, I don't want to get into another whole conversation about
Right, 'cause that's a different.
yeah.
It's not
So
this.
and again, it's a fundamentally different thought, and I think that I still believe there's room for both. I have issue with taking all of that away from the commission and just leaving it. I think that it's important that we hear from the businesses in town, and they do pay taxes, and they should have a seat at the table in economic development, and also helping perhaps drive economic development in town. So again, I see it as a 2-prong approach, and you see it as one. And so that's why we differ on membership.
Oh no, it's definitely a 2-prong approach. They need to create a chamber of commerce and
Yeah.
represent themselves,
Yes.
and this needs to be sole focus. So it's separating of the two.
And I disagree.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's that. I mean, and that's where we land. And so, Peter, if I can continue just my comments on this. So I certainly think that we've made a lot of headway, and I appreciate how far we've come with this charge, and I think it's good. I did put a few notes here, though. I feel like some of it is still vague, and again, it's just sort of like we've had like multiple discussions on economic development, and I sort of feel like this is a good place for us to land and test drive, and would like to loop back to this in a couple months and perhaps even have a workshop with John Allen and EDC, including Ray, maybe the chair of EDC, and say, how's this going? How do people respond to this charge? What can we add? What can we do different? Because again, I feel if I was sitting on this committee and I read the charge, I would still feel like a lot of this is vague, and I don't know how it's going to shake out. So I don't know if we're done, but I feel like we've made progress. That's where I'm at right now. For example, number 1, utilizing Mass General Law to steer the committee process. I don't know how that translates to agenda items. So that's just, how I'm reading it. And again, with my experience sitting on the committee, and I keep picking on Ray, but I'm interested in his input because he is now serving as select board chair on the committee. I'm having a hard time seeing how this will come into fruition, and I want to make sure we're successful. Because what I don't want to do is see the commission disbanded down the road because they're not meeting their charge or they don't understand their charge. And I think we all agree and we've all sort of written on the campaign platform that economic development is super important, and I believe we all agree with that, and I just want to make sure that we're utilizing this commission to its full capacity. And I think we're getting there, and I'm glad we're having these conversations, but I don't feel that we've landed.
Was that it, Doreen?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I'm
go
off
ahead.
my soapbox now.
So just to respond to the utilizing Mass General Law to steer the commission process, that's in the current charge.
Yeah.
So that, I mean,
Agreed.
if this is to help shake things up and start moving the ball, take it out. I mean, clearly it didn't do anything. You guys had it on the charge. It didn't really motivate any fruitful discussions. But at the same time, it needs to be in there as a reminder of don't break the law. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, but exactly. But it, like when it comes, and I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but like when it comes to like actually creating an agenda and action, which is what we want. We all want action from EDC, right? And so I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what they're supposed to do with that.
How does a business owner generate economic development when it kind of goes against what they really want? It's how do they generate competition for their business, essentially?
Yeah, again, and this is like the fundamental difference of supporting and retaining current businesses along with new growth. And that's, again, where we different. And I'm fine with, perhaps putting that as a subcommittee for the commission and having that be a level B sort of investment in their time. But I think that they automatically go there because the charge isn't clear on how they're expanding new growth.
Right, so I guess my thought was to make it clear by removing that part for them, because it is the low-hanging fruit, it is easy.
Yeah.
They've shown that they can do that, but at the same time, they've also shown that the business community can pull together and do events on their own, and they don't need EDC to do that. And that was that whole event we saw in the fall.
Yeah, fair
So,
enough.
I know you say we differ on that, and I can't drive it home enough that this is just not a chamber of commerce. We don't want that.
Yep. But let's take that issue aside and just say that if we're going to go in that direction, then we have to be, in my opinion, more clear on what the actions are. And I think we can agree on that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think again, like, it's not like I'm coming up with some great ideas of what to put down here. So I'll just say, like, do we, put this out as a trial and then get feedback from EDC? That's the suggestion I
It's
have
not a
moving forward.
Bad idea. Get some feedback from EDC on the draft. But, just real quick, is the board in favor of, let's just go through some of these proposed changes first and just get through that. You said the ZBA member, but remind me, Colleen, was it for the business owners or member at large that you were looking
So
for?
two people have tossed it out there. I recommended taking it down to one business owner and adding a ZBA member, where Doreen recommended to remove it down to 2 members at large and add a ZBA member. I think members at large can easily be business owners, so it's not a huge deal if we
That's a
take
fair
that
point.
down.
All right, so we'll go down to 2 members at large and add a ZBA member. Is everyone on board with that?
Or 3 members at large, 1 business owner and 1 ZBA member.
I just gotta go through the first one first.
Oh, okay.
Take a quick poll. All right. The second option there, everyone okay with, you said going down to 1 business owner, keeping 3 members at large and adding a ZBA member.
Yes,
Everyone like that idea?
I do.
Do I get some nods?
So we'd have 3 members at large, ZBA, business owner, planning, and select board.
That's right.
Yes, and the members at large could be business owners.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm in favor of that.
okay, let's make
I'll
that
support it.
change. Okay. And the next thing we talked about, section 2, number 1, I kind of agree with you, like, utilizing Mass General Law to steer the commission process.
Boom.
Yeah.
I'm okay with striking that from the charge. Ray's giving me the big yawn there.
That's his
gotta tell
favorite
you.
part of the charge. We're taking it
I
away.
gotta
from
tell you
us.
that the
Ray
horse
does that all day
is
long.
dead and the horse is dead was still hitting it.
That's it.
No, I think let's do this. Doreen said, let's look at this in 3 months. I think what we should do is put together the membership that we have, that we just talked about with the ZBA member and all of that stuff, and get a committee. And I mean, we have a committee now, but let's fill out the rest of the committee, and then let that committee have these discussions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then if that committee decides that, or wants to make a recommendation as to changing changing the charge of this thing, then we move from there.
All right. We'll put that on you, Ray.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
He looks really.
Okay. So we're good with that process right there. We're good. We can move on to charge for bylaw review committee.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so the only thing I'm changing is the membership.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and taking out number 1.
Taking out number 1.
We can
section
take
2.
it, yeah.
I'm okay
Just
with
don't
that.
break the laws. Just don't do it.
Okay.
So are we ready to move forward with adopting that charge as amended?
Yes.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I move the board vote to approve the Economic Development Commission charge as amended during discussion.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead.
Mead eye.
Mr. Alphen.
Often aye.
Mr. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. Okay, motion carried. We'll revisit this in a few months. All right. We'll have that ready to be signed for the next meeting. For just
And Peter, once we sign it, can we get it off to the EDC committee so that we can, to put together the ads, or have someone put together the ads so that we can get people on it?
Let me cut 7 days off your schedule and just, we took the vote to just have you send it out because you know what the changes we made. We just need to have that come here and formally sign it and endorse it. That's all we're doing. It's nothing we're taking any action on. So if William can just light a fire under it, we'll get it out.
Yep. Sounds great.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
Doreen, I
Awesome.
completely agree with your thought about getting together with John Allen. I think once this committee's formed, let's meet with them, let's have a workshop, and let's figure out, what economic development is going to mean to give them some direction.
Great. Yeah, I feel like I want to support this commission and I want to support this effort. And I feel like we've had a lot of discussions and we're getting there. I just want to make sure we get it right and that they feel like they have action items and that John understands what the commission does and vice versa. And I don't know if that has completely happened since we've had an economic development coordinator come on board. So
Yeah, I
it's an
just
important
think
discussion.
a meeting of the minds would be helpful. I'd love to hear from John. I'd love to hear from the new commission what their ideas are.
Yeah.
We haven't yet come to consensus on what our vision of economic development is. You guys articulated the two viewpoints pretty well there, I think. But we haven't, as a board, decided what it is that we want to focus on for this year and to support the commission in that in supporting that goal. So that I think that's really important. But I do want to hear from EDC and our economic development coordinator. So
Great. Me too.
look forward to that.
Me too. All right.
All right, next up, charge for bylaw review committee. All right. Any comments or questions on this? It's in draft form today.
Oh yeah, I'll go first again. I was waiting for anyone else. No. So did you guys all see the email
Yes.
from Candy?
Yes.
Okay, so that changes the membership, correct? Or how do we take
Yeah,
that
what
into
does it mean?
consideration?
Good question. I take her point. But I also think the likelihood is that she will be consistent throughout the process. So I don't know. Are we imagining them meeting before?
May?
Yeah, May.
It's a long process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that gets done in a couple of months.
Right.
I see her point too, but at the same time, I would like to see the clerk on there.
Yeah, I think it's a crucial role.
I do.
So
And
for me, I guess I would keep the membership the same.
Can we just modify town administrator or designee? Just because he's on every committee now, and he might want to toss this one out as a representative.
I'm
here and
fair
there.
with that.
William's in favor of that.
William is not in favor. He intentionally didn't have that on there.
start brushing up on the bylaws.
I would agree with that.
That change has been made, begrudgingly.
Unfortunately, okay. Any other questions or comments besides just the change in the membership, description, town administrator or designee?
I just have a question about the timetable. Where did that come from? And
That's, go ahead.
yeah, where did that come from?
Town charter.
Okay. Well then, yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, do you want to take a motion tonight, or do you want to see this come back on the 8th for final ratification?
We just made a minor change, so I think we should move forward.
Then I will entertain a motion if the board is willing.
Okay, I move the board vote to adopt the charge for the bylaw review committee as discussed and amended.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion?
Who's gonna tell Candy?
Peter.
Yeah, I know he wants to. I'll tell Candy. I'll tell Candy. That's
Okay.
fine. That's fine. I can have that conversation with her. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Upton?
Upton, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Aye.
Carlson, aye. The motion carried. All right, next up, food truck regulations.
You have Mr. Berger here from the building department to discuss that.
Right.
Awesome.
Hey, right there. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Berger,
Good evening, Select Board.
good evening.
Good evening.
So I thought Evan was going to be sitting right there, and he ran away. We've come into a situation where you do have food trucks throughout the town, and a couple business owners asked me, well, how did they get there? And I had to go back and think that I don't know how we got food trucks around. The first food truck that came in was probably back in the 80s or early 90s, and it was a hot dog stand in front of Wyman Gordon's. And I think the select board might have given them a license to operate there. Then they left and they went over to not where Koopman's is, but right in between Koopman's and the other plaza. And again, I don't know how they got there. In our bylaws, it states if you can't identify that use in our bylaw, then it's not allowed. So I don't want to go and tell everybody that you can't have food trucks. I think food trucks are a great vehicle to drive business in town. So I'm thinking maybe we should put together a process where the select board can authorize the food truck through this document that I presented to Evan, which he's presenting to you. And if we were going to take strictly a food truck and try to classify it under our bylaws, we would consider that a restaurant. And then it wouldn't be allowed because you can't have two principal uses on one lot. And I thought this was the best solution to the problem that we have. I did take this from Wellfleet and I adopted it to meet the needs of Grafton. Did everybody have a chance to at least look it over?
Oh, yeah.
I looked it over, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I've got a billion questions.
Okay.
I've got one.
I've been up all night.
Go ahead, Doreen.
Oh, I just want to know who else has reviewed this document besides you and Evan? Like Board of Health.
Town planner.
Town planner. What about Board of Health?
The Board of Health is going to license the food truck for the food content inside.
Right.
We're just talking about operating the food truck
Okay.
On town property or on private property.
Right, the Board of Health's authority is standalone from this. They have to do that regardless of whether or not we're permitting or not permitting.
Okay. Okay.
So.
It just, some of the things that came up just spoke clearly to me that Board of Health will be involved. So that's why I'm asking. But in planning was That's
Yes.
great. Okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
Anyone else before I go?
I just had one question. I know, for example, the North Street School has food trucks sometimes for their events. They're currently in a residential zone, so I'm just wondering if there might be a little bit more flexibility.
So it's exempt in here.
It is. I tried to figure out where that was.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it right now too.
So I note that private events on private residence, sort of, I'm thinking like the birthday ice
Yep.
cream truck night,
Yeah, yeah.
those are covered, so that's fine. And businesses on private property, as long as we have proof that they have authorization to be on the private property, fine.
Wait a minute. Let's just take that one at a time.
Sure.
You have Anzio Pizza. Anzio's Pizza operates either where the parking lot of the ice cream shop is in right by Town Hall.
Yep.
Or they're operating in the Bollock Plaza. So with this regulation, you're going to give them authorization to operate that food truck there.
Right. Yep.
It's okay. I just wanted to bring that out.
Yeah, no, I was more concerned about the North Street School actually, and just are there other instances where we would potentially have food trucks doing events in residential zones? That was my main concern.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's food trucks hired for private events on private property, do not require a license and are exempt from these regulations for the duration of the private event, which shall not exceed 24 hours.
Yep.
Is your concern that, like, North Street School is public property?
Yes. In a residential zone.
Okay.
Is
Let me
it
think about that for a minute.
Is it a residential zone too? I don't know how far down North Street it's considered commercial.
It's a school zone, is it not?
Yeah.
If operations
It
are
is
located on
it
town
is
property-
zoned, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
Go
no,
ahead, Robert.
I got it. So
Oh, you got-
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm just like Colleening it up over here. So I've got.
Here we go.
If operations are located on town-owned property, licensees shall provide evidence of comprehensive liability insurance, the amount specified by the SB, and conditions for permitting and listing of the town of Grafton as an additional named insured. Right?
I don't know. It expressly says residential zones are prohibited. So if you're saying that's an exemption that's valid for that use case, then fine.
What do you? All right. We'll dig. We'll have to. Bob. We'll have to dig deeper into that.
In principle, I think the structure's fine. And I agree with the concept. I think it's great that we will now have some controls in place where we can have them come before us and we can discuss, the uses and all of that, and actually have an allowed use.
Right. Right.
So yeah, but I don't want to be overly restrictive in ways that we're going to be preventing things that we want to be allowed.
Yeah.
So
maybe
I mean, the easiest way to do that is probably food trucks hired for private events on private property or public property.
Or just private events. Don't talk about property.
Well, you got to talk about property
Okay.
because what if you? Well, I have a specific instance in mind that I think you'd want to call out.
Do I get to hear it?
Probably not right now.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was my main one for that.
Okay.
And
I think that's a good point, and we can probably just redline that in.
I guess the only other thing which is just a little bit niggly is the enforcement piece of it. I think there are fines. It doesn't call out specifically who issues those fines. It calls out the police department or any enforcement officer, I think, or office, enforcement department. I think it would just make sense to call out specifically who those fines would come through, and if there's any process that needs to go through in terms of assessing violations or whatever. I just want to make sure that we have a reasonably enforceable regulation.
Yeah, so it does call out that you can issue fines if the circumstances warrant in the judgment of the police department or other enforcement officer, in which case suspension shall be reviewed by the select board. At its next available public meeting scheduled in accordance with open meeting laws, licensee may appeal any fine to the select board. So would you want that to be?
So who would issue the fines?
Either the police or other enforcement agency, which is essentially building.
Okay,
So-
if that's common language,
Yes.
fine. Then okay. It just wasn't super clear to me, so that's.
Unless you want to make me an enforcement officer, I'll get out.
No, I'm good with that. I just, yep.
Ticket everybody.
Okay.
So much revenue.
Okay, so I have a couple things I want to call out here.
Sure.
I believe under the operating requirements, for mobile food vendors, it poses some unique challenges, and one of those is the distance that's called out without getting written authorization or permission from someone who already has a common particulars license within that area. I think that's problematic.
Okay.
Okay. If the select board is giving and granting that authority, I don't care if they're within 50 feet. We're giving authority to operate in a specific vicinity, so we know how close they are. We might say, hey, we really want you on the other side of the common. We don't want you over here. Or we might say, nope, we want you over here because we want to congregate all the people over there for some specific reason. So let's say, hypothetically, one of the other owners says, I'm not giving them permission. Then what the hell do we do? Right?
Right.
So I really think that that's one of my issues that I have pertaining to this. And I get, this was brought from another town, but I think Grafton has some unique characteristics when we go and grant this type of license, like especially things that happen at the common.
Right. I think the intent is to. I would assume that there's some strife between brick and mortar buildings and food trucks, and so this is a way to give the brick and mortar folks a say in some of that. I also see your point, Peter, 100%. I mean, if the select board is granting a license, you know where things are, and it doesn't necessarily need the approval of another business owner to be able to have a food truck come in and sell their wares.
Yeah, because we're allowing them to go on public property. I think that restriction, and that's number 4, by the way, under operating requirements for mobile food vendors.
Yep.
Yeah,
Personally,
200 feet's up.
I want that gone.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. So licensee shall not deploy any freestanding signs, flags, unless specifically permitted by the select board. Now we're getting into signs.
Well, because your zoning bylaw has very strict regulations.
Yep.
And so the idea there is that, you say to, Joe Ice Cream, you can go on the town common, and now you've got those 15-foot flags out there. You got all kinds of stuff happening that are not permitted for any other business in the town of Grafton. So that's really what that language seeks to achieve.
Okay. 6, licensee shall not deploy tables or seating unless specified permitted by the select board. I'm okay with that. I don't need them getting additional permission from the health agent. I'm not going to lie to you. If we're granting them that authority, then we're taking that under consideration. We understand the safety ramifications. I mean, we've discussed this countless times at this board for other types of situations.
Yep.
So I really would like to see that removed out of that part.
Sure.
Where is it? I'm good with number 7. I think that's logical. I think police officers should have the authority to tell people to move if they feel that it's going to be a imminent threat or danger to traffic or pedestrian safety.
Yep.
8's great. 9. 10. 11, and then 12 is, I mean, what if someone wants to serve breakfast sandwiches at 6? I mean, I'm just thinking of all of these things, and like you're putting these constraints in there on the time. For example, on number 12, what if someone wants to sell breakfast sandwiches to a group of construction workers or something like that?
Those are, I don't know what the proper term is, roach coaches.
Yeah.
Which are not regulated by this.
Right, but they are not going to say no when someone from the general public just decides to come up and say, hey, I want.
Yeah, I mean, we specifically talked about the roach coaches to make sure that we weren't infringing on their ability to show up at a construction site at 5 o'clock in the morning and give out breakfast sandwiches.
Just 6 a.m. I'm just thinking, you're catching people at the end of maybe third shift or something like that. Like I said, these are.
Yep.
the more constraints and the more complex you make this without giving, business owners an opportunity to have some wiggle room, they're gonna keep coming back and forth here.
Yeah, I do think that how we got around that, and I'm perfectly happy to change that number to 6. But we had put in the language that unless otherwise specified, so that the board had leeway to do that, and if you omitted it, those are the set hours. So it's really just a fallback, but we can expand the fallback from 6 a.m.
Okay.
That's I don't foresee that being an issue.
Now I want to breakfast sandwich.
One,
I'm
I
thinking
mean,
about
two,
waffles. Am I a waffle
I'm getting hangry, if you can tell. Yeah, I'm sorry. And Bob, this is no directed towards you. These are just my comments on just the feedback of this. Application shall expire December 31st. I don't think I have anything else. That's all I have.
Okay. Those all the comments from the board? Okay.
Ray, do you have anything?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so if you had a food truck at your house for a party, that's not gonna be regulated by
Nope,
this.
totally
correct?
exempt from this policy.
That's right.
Okay, so this policy
Unless
is
they're there
really
for days.
well, no. Not in my house anyway. So this policy is really for somebody who wants to set up semi-permanent, correct?
Semi-permanent or different locations around town. It's really to it really solves a problem for us, and that is the disproportionate and inequitable way that we have food trucks set up in the town. Because you've got some people doing it this way, some people they've been doing it that way for 10 years. There's, well, what about me? I'm just trying to start a food truck, and where can I go? And this gives a set of parameters for every single food truck in town that everybody has to abide by, and I think makes it much more equitable. That's really what we're trying to achieve with this. We've been talking about food trucks, I think, for the majority of the last year, between Bob, Chris, and I. And like I said, I don't want to keep harping on it, but that really the impetus is not to add yet one more layer of bureaucracy, but rather to make the process equitable for all the food truck owners in town that want to do business in Grafton. So everybody's playing by the same rules.
Yep. So this is for the Best in Show hot dogs. This is for the moving cow.
Moving cow. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. So it basically gives them guidelines and essentially makes them. And what I'm hearing is it makes them legal with a permitted process.
Right. And so, because what happens right now is they come in and they say, well, I want to do it there, and Bob has to say, well, you can't because that's residential. What about this guy? He's in the residential zone. Well, yeah, he's been there for 10 years. How did that happen? We don't know.
Yep.
And that happens everywhere. This is not a Grafton specific thing, but this gives us the framework to make it everybody's on equal footing.
Got it.
Great idea.
Yep, I'm good.
Bob, Mr. Berger has his hand up. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Trying to call you out.
So what I'm envisioning, or what I envisioned when we put this all together, is if somebody wants to have a food truck at a particular location, they're going to come up in front of your board, and they're basically going to present some sort of a site plan, nothing from an engineer, but just a GIS site plan where they're going to show where they're going to place that food truck. And it's up to your board to decide, you know what, this is a good spot for it, or the traffic flow doesn't work for this particular area, and we don't think it's a good idea, so we're not going to give you that permission to have that food truck. That's a very rare case, but it gives you, as the select board, the opportunity to approve a location or disapprove a location.
And I just have one more follow-up question with that. And the timeline can change, right? So we're giving examples of people who have been in business for a long time, but let's say, for example, somebody had the idea, oh, I want to be, at the beach location for the summer these days to serve any, like we could set a timeline.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And you can, the other nice thing is that you could set it up. You have 3 food trucks that want to be there.
Right.
Well, this is your day. This is your day. This is your day. and now you don't run into, you know, too many vehicles in a parking lot, you know, you can regulate all
Right.
of that stuff.
And then we know.
Which I think, again, is more of an equity issue than anything else, right? It's access, right? It's not just Joe who's been in Grafton his whole life and gets to set up at the town common every day and nobody else is allowed to do that. Well, no, you might only get there 2 days a week now because you've got to spread that out.
Right.
Equal opportunity, yeah.
How does alcohol and food trucks work? Do they need a special?
Yeah, so usually they're 1 day licenses as far as I know. That's the only way I've ever seen it done. Usually there's a like what was the one I had it was like called the beer guy or something, and they came and they had a 1 day license and had to set up a perimeter. You know, like they came with their own stanchions and you know it was pretty much just like you would for, you know, Sunflower Shanty or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, same process.
Okay.
Thank you. You actually brought up another point to me. Like, why, for example, would like agricultural zoning district be prohibited?
Mr. Chair, that's a residential neighborhood.
An agricultural zoning district is is residential.
Yep, that's R80 or R8.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else?
Just one last one. I'm just thinking about Holden Farms. So they've got a food truck on there. It's private residence, I guess. And that's just parked there. So would they be in non-compliance with this potentially?
Holden Farms would be taking, if I'm not mistaken, the agricultural exemption for
Okay.
agricultural tourism.
I see.
Which this carve out solves that issue
Okay.
of it not being allowed currently. In
Alright.
theory.
Okay. That's a good question. Thank you. All right.
That's
Anything
what I
else?
want, Colleen.
Colleen, I'm sorry. Did you have your hand up, Colleen?
No.
Not
I told
shocking,
Colleen I
I
didn't
know.
want to
I know, we're like.
talk about
once.
business
Yeah.
specifically. Yep. No, that's the one. But
There it
this,
is.
this fixes it.
Well, I was like, if you put wheels on it, can it be a food truck instead of a shanty?
Yeah. Well, that actually does come up. If they take the wheels off, it causes a whole nother conversation. So we'll let's not go too far down that rabbit hole.
We will stop talking
All right.
now.
Well, thanks
Yep.
for bringing this up. So we'll see that he's come back with some of the changes.
Yeah.
And we'll put this on for the 15th. Was that enough time to kind of get this in place?
Yes, those are pretty short
Okay.
lifts.
All right.
Thank you, Bob. This is great. I think this is an example of when government works well. Because there was a problem, and I think this is going to solve a lot of issues for a lot of people that are trying to do business here. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
It is.
Thank
Great.
you, Bob.
All right, Select Board, everybody have a great night.
Thanks,
you.
Bob. You too.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, capital and road stabilization procedure.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't like the one that's in the packet, and I wrote a different one. So there's two options to me. Either you can work off that one if the board wants to make their adjustments. You can look at the one that I wrote, or we can potentially table and come back with a different one.
Does the board, let me ask the board this one easy question. Do you wish to table this for a future meeting?
Is this the one that you have of similar size? Is
Yeah,
this one?
it's a one pager.
Then I recommend we just table it because I think it's going to be quick and there's no action we need to take right now on
agree.
on that.
I got a couple of questions since it was in the packet that made me
Okay.
recognize that like we know what we're talking about,
But not
but the
everyone
future
Not
board
every-
may not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I rewrote it
Yep.
this afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice.
So sorry about the short notice.
All right, so we'll table that and bring that into a future meeting. We don't have any meeting minutes tonight. I'll ask the board, I know it's kind of running late, but does it still want to go into executive session or does it want to table and postpone that?
What do you mean late? It's not even.
Yeah, we can do it.
I'm just asking, that's all. All right,
Do it.
Let's do it.
I need a second here.
Second.
This. 1 second.
Oh, does Ray need an extra link? How does that work?
No, we'll kick everyone out of the room to make it,
Yeah.
Sorry, Ed. I think Ed Frisbee's the only one left.
Oh.
All right. I would like at this point, the board and committee will now consider entering executive session in accordance with open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, pursuant to, I believe it is purpose 2, conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Name of personnel would be Evan Brassard. And withholding this information is warranted at this time. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. DeFazio?
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Carlson, aye. The board will now enter executive session and will only reconvene in open session for the purposes of adjournment. I want to thank everyone and have a great night.